Hello friends, today we are going to see about reincarnation in Naruto with Useless System Part 7. Don't forget to subscribe the channel before you see the video, so you will get new updates. My Instagram link is given in the description, don't forget to follow. Let's get in the video.
Daiki had forgotten how much it truly sucked to have chakra exhaustion. Even before he slurped up Isabu into his chest like a big wet tortoise-flavored noodle, he'd been very careful to train himself just to before the point of chakra exhaustion and never fall past the line. After all, if he had chakra exhaustion, he would be laid up recovering for ages and thus would lose precious time that could either be spent grinding for gains. As it was, even with Isabu's chakra running through his veins, allowing him to move, he still felt lightheaded and his limbs heavier than the weights he wore. Which were 20,000 pounds by the way. Which was like 10 tons or so. His limbs literally felt heavier than that. He practically had to drag himself in an army crawl over to Shisui's corpse. Toka laughing all the way at him as she hopped up onto the bed he'd left out. She really did find a lot of amusement in bullying him. That wasn't fair at all by the way. I'm not a nerd. He whined mentally. He was big, tough and muscular. He could lift a grown man with a single pinky finger. He was manly with a capital M. As it was, he sealed Shisui's corpse into his Dimension Force seal, before flopping onto his back and just laying there. "Can you help me up onto the bed?" Daiki asked his bully lizard. "No." Toka snorted. "Think of this as a lesson to think things through more carefully, you silly meathead buffoon." Daiki pouted. Well, whatever. It wasn't like he couldn't really do it if he wanted to. He just couldn't be bothered. Another unfortunate side effect of chakra exhaustion. Lethargy and lack of motivation. It was truly the antithesis to the grind. Only heretics to the grind like Kakashi fondly fornicated with chakra exhaustion. And that guy got chakra exhaustion a lot in the other timeline. He'd recover faster of course if he could stop using his eyes. Sadly for him, unlike chakra exhaustion's personal gigolo Kakashi, just covering his eyes didn't exactly stop them from working. Still, it wouldn't take him that long to recover. An hour or two at best, thanks to not only Isabu, but the chakra being constantly fed into his coils by the Heavenly Star Seal. He would just have to tough it out until then. He apologized mentally to the grind. No wait, he took that back. This is an opportunity to grind resistance to chakra exhaustion. Daiki realized. Now that he was exposed to it, if this ever somehow happened again, he would be more used to it. "By the way, you have a visitor," Toka commented, "so I'll leave you to that and have a nap for now I believe. Human beds aren't too bad," she said, and then faded out of view entirely. Though he knew she was still there of course. And just as she did, there was a knock on his door. She was right. Damn it, he hadn't sensed anyone approaching at all. Sure, his senses were dulled right now. But still, I've got a long-ass way to go before I catch up to her sensory abilities. He grimaced. Well, whatever, he'd just need to grind that out more later. "Come in," Daiki called out. "It's open." He'd get up and open it himself, but he was feeling rather lazy, what with that thirsty thought chakra exhaustion having her slutty claws dug deep into him right now. The door swung open and Daiki blinked as he found himself looking at a familiar bun-haired older girl. They had finished the exam already. Did that mean the Sound Trio had attacked Team 7 already? He wondered if they did better this time around. "Sup?" Daiki greeted the girl, plastering a debonair smile across his face. Tenten raised an eyebrow at him. "What are you doing?" she asked dryly. "Just chillaxing like a bala," Daiki replied, and would have casually shrugged, if he currently had the motivation to do so. Her other eyebrow rose up and joined the first. "Somehow, knowing you, I doubt that. Do you even know the definition of chilling out? Or is this just some new way of training you've discovered?" the bun-haired girl asked with a snort and crossed her arms. "I'm training to resist chakra exhaustion." He tried. Tenten stared blankly at him for a second before sighing and kicking the door shut behind her. "You mean you did something stupid and exhausted all your chakra and now can't move?" She sliced right through his bullshit, walking over and crouching next to his head. Why do you assume it was something stupid and not intentional? Daiki dug his feet in. Metaphorically, since you know, chakra exhaustion and all. Because we've hung out a decent little bit now, spent a decent amount of time together with that date we were on and all, and I've managed to get a decent grasp on you, I think. Tenten smirked at him and poked his cheek, daring him to bat her hand away. He of course could, he just didn't do so, because he liked the feel of her finger. Yeah, totally. The first time we met at that restaurant I thought you were cool, but you're almost as big an idiot as Lee and Guy Sensei. Hey, now that's uncalled for. Daiki protested. I'm cool. You look cool, there's a big difference. Tenten denied his protests. You're actually a dork, and a pervy one at that. Ellipsis. Pervy dork. Did someone else hear glass shattering? No. So it was just his pride then. If he had the motivation for it right now, he would have slumped over in depression. The illusion of his pride had been destroyed, completely shattered, as if some spiky-haired delinquent had punched right through it. His cool image, the badass front he put up to show his greatness, it was all for nothing. I've been telling you that for a while now, you know. Isabu huffed. Yes, but he thought Isabu was just yanking his chain. So, what really happened? Tenten asked, breaking him from his thoughts. Quote ellipsis. I didn't think properly. Jumped right in while trying something out and exhausted all of my chakra. Daiki admitted with a sigh. No point really hiding it at this point. Well, roughly how he ended up in this state. Not that he actually restored the corpse of an Uchiha to perfect health so he could harvest its eyes. Must have been quite the technique. Tenten whistled, halting in, poking his cheek. You're an endurance freak after all and have chakra for days. Something like that. Daiki snorted. So guess you finished the exam then. He changed the subject. Yup, not long ago actually. Fourth team so far apparently. She grinned at him, flashing him a V sign with 2 fingers. Heard you were the first one to finish, Mr. Ringer. In record time at that. Less than an hour, baby. I'm awesome like that. He grinned. You're something all right. The bun-haired girl rolled her eyes. Full of it, I'm thinking. Still, that's why I came here, since I heard you were already here. You miss me that much? He joked. Want a second date? Tenten snorted, amused. Actually, Lee got into a bit of a fight with those sound punks and didn't take them seriously. They busted up his eardrums so his balance is all thrown off and he can't hear right. She replied. I'm not really good enough with the mystical palm jutsu yet to do delicate stuff like that, so was hoping you could heal him up, but looks like that's a no-go for now. She gave a helpless shrug. So that had gone down the same then. I'll do it later, once I've recovered, should only take a few hours, he promised, and she gave him an odd look, but didn't comment. So the sound team, huh? I was thinking of bullying them a bit myself the other day for attacking one of us, but they were too weak to be any fun hunting down, to be honest. They have some niche techniques. That sound arm thing the lead one has was kinda interesting, and one of them even had a wind jutsu that's a lot like yours, Tenten mused, but yeah, they weren't all that strong, to be honest. Lee could have beaten all 3 of them easily enough if he took his weights off. Should have done that before the exams started, really. Daiki rolled his eyes. Lee definitely had the strength to be a chunin, but he completely lacked the mentality. True, though he has his reasons, silly as they might seem to some. Tenten shrugged again. Honestly, they were kind of annoying. Thought they were hot shit for ganging up on that pink-haired girl, Sakura, I think. We didn't need to in the end because it seems she's friends with you. Because she busted out the jutsu of yours. Daiki blinked. She did. Yeah. She got caught up by that sound chick grabbing her hair, and the stupid bitch went off on some rant about her long hair despite having even longer hair. Wasn't mouthing off for long though, Tenten growled before. Snorting, the Sakura chick cut off her hair, then used it as a bit of a smokescreen to get the jump on the bitch. Punched her right in the stomach and used your jutsu on her. Would've probably killed her if her arm didn't snap like a twig in the process. As expected, she couldn't handle the jutsu with her current arm strength. But still, Sakura actually took Kin down. And she did exactly as he said, used it only when she was sure she would get the hit in. Good on her. The guy with a jutsu like yours totally wigged out seeing it though, went on a total rager about her copying him and stuff. It was kind of pathetic actually, Tenten continued. He tried to blast her with his own, but she fired off your jutsu with her other arm, snapped it as well I think, but managed to block his own with it. Then the Uchiha kid woke up, had some weird tattoos, his chakra went all nasty and acted like a total psycho. He ended up killing the guy when he saw what happened to his teammate and then the bandage guy who was the leader. Then Dosu and Zaku were dead then. That was new and an unexpected development. Still, that Uchiha kid was really unstable there for a bit, almost called us out for a fight as well before that Naruto kid woke up. Tenten continued. Blondie made a big fuss about his teammate's shorter hair and the Uchiha snapped out of whatever berserker rage he was in and those weird tattoos and his nasty chakra disappeared real quick. Daiki frowned in thought. This will change things up a bit come the preliminaries, he mused. But then again, their existence wasn't actually all that important in the grand scheme of things. Dosu would get killed by Gaara off-screen and Kin and Zaku just got used as Edo Tensei sacrifices. Orochimaru could get any two sacrifices, so they weren't all that important really. Can't say I'm not glad how things turned out though. The bun-haired girl grinned. I managed to get my hands on that gauntlet the bandage guy had. He called it the Melody Arm I think. It'll be fun to learn how to use in the future. Another change. Not exactly a massive one, but still another change. And sound-based techniques would be super useful for her in the future. He needed time to think this. His thoughts were derailed by surprisingly soft hands grasping his head and gently lifting it up and directed the back of his skull to a pair of full, firm, yet comfortable thighs. Daiki froze. What are you doing? He asked blankly, looking directly up at Tenten now from where his head lay on her thighs. Well, I figure since it'll be a good while before you can move, I may as well make things more comfortable for you. She smirked down at him. Come on, you can't say a perv like you isn't happy getting a lap pillow from me. You weren't exactly shy before in complimenting my, let's be polite and say my looks. Was she coming on to him? You could just help me over to the bed he pointed out. I can if you want. Tenten raised an eyebrow challengingly at him. Nope, I'm good here. He instantly backtracked. I thought so, she snorted, her smirk turning wry. One seriously could not underestimate the healing properties of a lap pillow. Daiki practically felt his chakra recovery speed up massively, 1000% over even. It was such a speedy recovery technique, that in response to Tenten's teasing, he managed through sheer epic badassery, to roll in place so he was laying face down on her thighs and could feel the full lusciousness of them against his cheeks. He inhaled and then exhaled deeply. Smells like victory. A hand wove itself into his hair and fingers grasped his short spiky tresses and he found his face yanked up by the grip, his nose practically being buried in Tenten's toned belly for a second before his head was tilted up and found the brunette looking down at him, one eyebrow raised, gaze dry. Really? She deadpanned. Looking up at her like this, he could only see half of her face, the rest was blocked out by the surprisingly large sloping of her breasts. Well, you probably don't know being a complete pleb with medic ninjutsu, but lap pillows are known to speed up recovery rates by 100%, Daiki helpfully informed her. Going the face down route of it though with a cute girl, boosts that 10 times over. Somehow her gaze became even drier and her other eyebrow raised up to join the first. You must be really great at infiltration missions with how easily you can bullshit with such a straight face. The bun-haired older girl snorted. I'm not bullshitting, remember, I had to move to change my position. Daiki smirked at her, proof that it works. Utterly shameless. She shook her head, letting go of his hair and letting his face plop down against her thighs. Despite how firm and toned they were, her thighs were also surprisingly soft somehow. Such a mystery. Not that he was complaining. You're an utter menace, she continued. I can only imagine the amount of girls you've taken advantage of like this and got away with just because you're cute and strong. None really, he said, his voice muffled slightly because of her thighs. You're the only one who's ever given me a lap pillow. Be proud. He could have taken advantage of Hinata most likely, but he wouldn't. He'd felt up Sakura, but that was just for a laugh and to hype her up, and pinching Ino's ass didn't count. And Kurenai and Anko didn't count either, because he couldn't be taking advantage of them when they freely offered to ride his dick. That was on them. Really, his restraint was quite admirable when he thought about it. He was quite the gentleman. Oh wow, my biggest achievement yet, Tenten replied with a snort. I can practically see the Hokage giving me a Chunin vest and a super chakra blade as a reward right now. I mean, if she wants to be my personal lap pillow giver, that's an easy reward. He laughed mentally. Tenten was actually one of the most suited to be a Chunin in his general age group. She wasn't the strongest, nor was she the smartest, but she was mature and struck a nice middle ground between them with having both the strength and intelligence for the role, whereas most of the candidates were like Naruto, Sasuke and Lee, specced into the strength and not having the maturity, or the likes of Shikamaru who specced into the intelligence role and lacked the strength. The whole theme of the Chunin exams here was about that heaven and earth crap that old man Sarutobi thought up. Only those possessing of both the required mental and physical ability would be promoted. Funny how that got hand-waved for Shikamaru and nobody else. Then again, the old man was dead and gone by the time the promotions came about. He probably just got promoted because of Asuma pushing for it and nobody wanting to slap the man down after he just lost his father. It was that or Shikaku pushing for it as the more or less Jonin commander that seemed the most likely options to Daiki. He refused to believe the examiners could be that utterly bum-fucking stupid to promote him over everybody else for his showing against Temari. Nepotism at its finest for sure. Well, if he ended up Hokage, it wasn't going to happen unless that noodle-armed shadow boy got put through a grind course and gained some muscle. None of his teams would be getting led on missions by such a flimsy guy. Honestly, such an unmotivated guy was near the last he'd promote from his age group. Chunin vest and chakra blade, got it, Daiki nodded into Tenten's thighs, seems a pretty good trade for you as my personal lap pillow giver. That actually might make being Hokage worth it. He'd have his clones do all the work while he chillaxed with his head in Tenten's lap. He'd totally need to find some sheer skirt for her to wear though. Like a harem one. He should hit up the daimyo or something to ask him about getting harem girl outfits. No wait, a belly dancer outfit would look way better on Tenten. Last I checked you weren't Hokage. Tenten pointed out. For now, but I'm pretty much next in line, he responded. Ahoo, and where'd you get that idea? The bun-haired girl's voice was light as she asked, clearly disbelieving. 'Cause I'm just that awesome, he smirked into her thighs. No doubt if the Hokage were to die anytime soon or step down they'd pick me to replace him. And did you wake up with your face in a bowl of cereal after that dream? Tenten snorted. Or did you hit your head before I found you? Lemme check for a bump. He felt one of her hands reach into his hair and gentle rake through his dark tresses. Haters gonna hate, but that does feel good. He replied idly and just relaxed and enjoyed the feeling. It wasn't like he blamed her for not believing him. After all, he had a hard time believing it sometimes that he was basically the next Hokage and he'd had a decent while to process it now. And Tenten wasn't exactly privy to his full strength and resources, never mind his Jinchuriki abilities and the like. Maybe your head is just one big lump and that's why I can't feel one on here. She mused sardonically as she continued to gently rake her fingers through his short spiky hair. Your head is plenty big enough for it. I'm gonna give you D-rank missions for a year straight when the truth come outs. He laughed. Sure you are, the bun-haired girl drawled sarcastically. Heck, tell you what, if it does turn out to be true, I'll give you a lap pillow whenever you want. Ooh. High stakes there. Daiki grinned and turned his head over a bit so he could look up into her eyes with one of his own. I'm pretty possessive, you know, which means no other boyfriend for you when that happens. These cozy thighs will belong to me. Ahoo, she rolled her eyes. Guess I'd be stuck with you then. Daiki blinked, before his grin widened to shit-eating proportions. That sounds like a proposition to me, he replied. You're the one that loves having your face between my thighs. Tenten deadpanned. Touché. Among other things, he shot back, but it's good to know. Good to know what? She furrowed her brows. How good my game is. He gave a tiny shrug that only the recovery power of the legendary lap pillow afforded him, and that you're totally fine being stuck with me. His grin reached shit-eating proportions. Despite how cool she'd played it so far, Tenten was unable to stop the slight flush her cheeks took on. I don't see you complaining about it, she replied. As if I would, Daiki laughed. I'd probably be a shit boyfriend, but I wouldn't say no to dating you. Her lips quirked up. Is that so? The bun-haired older girl mused, before reaching down to flick him on the nose. Save it for after the exams, lover boy. We can try it out a bit if you want, see if it works out. Totally fine with me, he agreed. 2 hours later, Daiki was up back on his feet and moving again. Albeit a bit stiffly. His chakra capacity had fully recovered though, which was what mattered. He just felt like he'd had a cheat day and gorged on a bunch of artery-clogging junk food full of salt and super greasy fat. As if he took a bite out of Choji's mother's ass. Not that he would. There were some things even the ever-fearless Daiki-sama himself was too afraid to face head-on. And this is the boy that plans to save the world. Isabu groaned. Daiki shrugged. I know my limits, buddy, he replied mentally as he made his way down the hall. The assigned bedrooms were located in with Tenten by his side, or rather a bit in front of him, leading him to where her team's room was. And because he was taking advantage of his exhausted body to check her out from behind. It was only a short walk that took less than 30 seconds, about 25 at most, and only because of his pace and the fact that Tenten's team had claimed the most far-away room at the end of the hall for whatever reason. Daiki personally had chosen the first one. He had no idea why none of the other two teams had before he got here. Possibly some strategic thing or something, honestly, he couldn't be sure since he saw nothing wrong with taking the first room he came across. You know, are you sure you had chakra exhaustion? Tenten looked over his shoulder at him, forcing him to drag his eyes up from where he was admiring her backside. She rolled her eyes but didn't comment, because I've had chakra exhaustion before, a few times even, and I was laid up for days recovering. It's only been 2 hours and you're up and about. Your thighs have the magic touch. What can I say? Daiki shrugged with a grin. She gave him a thoughtful look. So it's just some trait you have then, bloodline maybe. She mused. Yep, it's called the sexogen. When I'm in contact with a knockout like you, all of my parameters are increased by 1000%. He nodded and revealed. Well, keep your secrets if you want. Tenten rolled her eyes and turned back around, though not fast enough to hide the flush that spread over her cheeks once again at his compliment from his eyes. I'll get it out of you at some point. I mean, if you wanna know that badly, I'll tell you, for a lap dance. Daiki grinned. Tenten paused and once again looked over her shoulder at him, giving the younger boy a deadpan look. Slow down a bit, hotshot, she replied dryly. We haven't even had a proper kiss yet. Never mind started dating and you want to jump straight to a lap dance. That was quite the interesting tell. You didn't deny you could give one, he pointed out. Besides, what's a kiss compared to lewdly holding hands? He joked. They had indeed been holding hands for a decent bit during the date not that long ago. What kunoichi couldn't give a lap dance? Tenten snorted derisively, before turning back around and continuing down the hall. Daiki stopped in his tracks and blinked. Being able to give a lap dance is mandatory for kunoichi. He goggled after her. Were seduction classes in the academy actually a thing? He thought that was just bullshit. But the girls did have some classes separate from the boys. He'd need to ask old man Hokage about that. Also, if true and he became Hokage, he'd for sure need to review the skills of all the beautiful kunoichi. For the good of Konoha, of course. Just to make sure they were up to par and not rusty. Moments later, they arrived at Team Guy's room, and Tenten opened the door, directing him inside. Daiki blinked at what he found. I kind of should have expected this, he thought. Neji was sitting on the edge of one of the 3 beds, the one closest to the wall and one that seemed to have been moved a bit away from the others. While Lee was doing one-handed vertical push-ups. 6,668, 6,669, the bowl-cut-haired boy counted off to himself, before noticing his presence. Ah, Daiki-san. Good to see you. How have you been? It seemed he'd gotten quite into a little bit of training over the past 2 hours while Tenten was with him. I've been good, Lee. You? He replied automatically. Sorry, what was that? Lee suddenly shouted. I am afraid I cannot hear you, my ears have been damaged. Daiki rocked back on his feet, startled in spite of himself at the sudden loudness. Neji sighed irritably. He heard Tenten face palm from behind him and then groan. Please fix this idiot. He seems fine to me. Daiki shrugged, looking over his shoulder to the grin at the bun-haired girl. You're not as funny as you think you are, you know, she deadpanned. Why does everyone keep saying that? He rolled his eyes. First Isabu, now Tenten. He was hilarious and people quoted everything he said. That has never once happened before, ever, and it will never happen. The only person who thinks you are funny is yourself. Isabu deadpanned, like the hater he was. Tenten rolled her eyes right back at him, before stepped past and reaching down and palming Lee by the face. I told you to take it easy until you got healed, didn't I, you moron? She huffed, and bodily picked him up with one hand and tossed him onto the bed. What? Lee shouted in question as he landed on the bed. Tenten, that was not very youth. She palmed him by the face once more, shutting him up. Please just be quiet, she groaned, then turned her head to give him a pleading look. Please fix him up so he can go back to his normal loud volume and not this. See, I would. Daiki trailed off and gave a shrug, but my feelings have been hurt. I'm all depressed and as it turns out, my chakra control dips by -69,000,000% when I'm feeling sad. Seriously, she gave him a dead stare. You're doing this because I said you're not funny. Hey, what's with that look? Daiki smirked for a brief second before giving a mock gasp of pain and grasping his chest in an over-the-top manner, even making sure to stagger back a bit just to add to the show and force his legs to tremble. I'll have you know I've been wounded in the heart. This is true emotional damage. I'm going to cut you. She deadpanned. Well, my chakra control is shot and now I'll have to worry about getting attacked. How am I supposed to use medical ninjutsu like that? Daiki retorted. I hate you so much right now. Somehow, her voice became even more dead. Like wow, if her voice was a corpse right now, it would have been in worse condition than Shisui's body. Oof. Daiki grasped his chest even harder and stumbled back against the door. The emotional damage just doubled. -69 billion chakra control now. What is happening? Lee tried to bounce up from the bed, only kept down by Tenten pushing down on him. Daiki-san, my friend, are you okay? Tenten, just give him what he wants. Neji's head mechanically turned to stare at her, his somehow blank-eyed gaze becoming even more blank. He had some real skill with his eyeballs for sure. Whatever he wants, just give him it. Whatever will shut that idiot up. I'm this close to puncturing my own eardrums. How is 69 billion doubled from 69 million? This is so stupid. She groaned. Your mind is just at a lower stage than mine, I'm afraid. My brain exists in a higher dimension. Daiki replied, his lips twitching up into a brief smirk before he hid it again. Tenten's eyebrows twitched. She totally saw it. Is that the dumbass dimension? She snarked with a huff. Oh. Daiki's legs gave out beneath him and he slumped to the ground, limp. Daiki-san, Lee shouted, eyes wide in horror. Is this truly my fate? How cruel. Neji rubbed his temples, trying to massage away what was no doubt quite the killer headache. All All right, I give up, you win. Tenten's shoulders slumped in defeat. The bun-haired older girl closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she exhaled a few moments later and opened her eyes, a bright perky smile was on her face and she walked over to Daiki, hips swaying. Daiki-sama tilde. Daiki perked up. He was actually quite surprised when Tenten boldly sat right down on his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck, bringing one of her hands around to gently trail a finger daintily over his cheek. You're so cool and strong, Daiki-sama. I bet all the other guys around here wish they could be like you tilde. She simpered, and so handsome too. This is all true. Daiki nodded, though not gonna lie, wow, she can act really well. If he didn't know any better, he for sure would think he was dealing with a fangirl on the level of Sakura or Ino in their heyday of Sasuke simpery. And so humble tilde, she gave a tittering giggle, crushing the flash of exasperation that appeared on her face for a brief moment expertly. Can you do me a favor, Daiki-sama, and please heal my dumb teammate? It would mean ever so much to me tilde, she asked, leaning forward to plant a quick, chaste smooch on his cheek, before pulling back to give him a pleading look. His hands grasped her hips and in one motion he rose to his feet, and suddenly I'm totally healed, he announced. Sure, I'll fix up your teammate for you, Tenten-chan, anything for a fan. You're the best, Daiki-sama. Tilde, she chirped, pressing another quick smooch to his cheek before letting go of him. Tenten-san. Daiki-san, what is going on? Lee hollered, ruining the moment. Tenten cringed. Daiki laughed, walking past her. Don't worry about it, leotard boy. He waved the bow-cut ninja off. He noted Neji was giving both him and Tenten a horrified look, his head turning from him to her and back again, back and forth, as if unable to understand what just happened, but disgusted all the same and not sure who to direct that disgust at. He could see Tenten's face burning bright red in his peripheral vision, but being a generous guy and all, he didn't stare and make it worse, or comment on it. Instead, he formed a single hand seal of one of his most used jutsu and green healing chakra began to warm around his hands. When he was done healing Lee, he beat a hasty retreat. Just to let Tenten calm down a bit. She hid it well, but her embarrassment at simping for him to boost his ego to do what she asked, had hurt her pride a bit. And she knocked Lee the fuck out when he was still just as loud. Like full-on senbon tipped with a sleeping drug. And stabbed him in the leg with it. Well, it was fine, she could heal that much herself. He wasn't afraid or anything, of course, he just wanted to let her get her emotions under control. Honest. Okay, so maybe he pushed it a bit far. I regret nothing. Daiki grinned to himself as he returned to his room, closing the door behind him. It may have embarrassed Tenten to put on that little act, but he got to see an all-new side of her. So it was totally worth it. And all that because she said you weren't funny. Isabu snorted. Clearly a lie. Daiki shrugged. Just because everyone else had such low levels of humor, didn't mean he wasn't funny, it just meant everyone else was too dumb. Clearly, obviously, that's a bigger delusion than Shukaku thinking he can take Kurama on in a fight. Isabu scoffed. Hey, it could happen. If Shukaku fought Kurama out in the desert, he'd have the advantage, and for as stupidly powerful as Kurama was, he was only at half strength now at best, so he wouldn't put it past Shukaku to eke out a vict. No, it wouldn't even be close. Isabu cut him off. Even at only half capacity, Kurama would still have more chakra than the other 8 of us combined, and while when it comes to you humans, more chakra isn't really a full indicator of strength, it's different for us Bayu. The more chakra we have, the stronger, more durable and faster we are in general, and of course, none of us even come close to Kurama's destructive output with a Bayudama. Even now, he could form one that could blow away an island and the entire surrounding area easily. Shukaku has no chance one-on-one, even in the desert. Granted, Daiki had a good idea of how absurdly strong Kurama was just from reference. After all, he did see Kurama in his first Bayu transformation with Naruto, beat not only his buddy Isabu himself, but Matatabi, Son Goku, Kokuo, Saiken and Chome. And even with all 6 of their Beyudamas combined, Kurama still counted them at full power, after they had a head start in charging theirs over his. Poor Shukaku. Ganbare Sand Guy. Well, at the very least, he can take pride in being a tanuki and having the biggest balls of all. Daiki mused. We Beiyu lack genitalia. I have told you this before, have I not? Isabu snorted. Oh yeah. Poor Shukaku-chan. Indeed, Isabu laughed. While we all have rather useful and powerful abilities, in the end, Kurama's raw power and strength trumps the versatility we have over him. At full power, I would be lucky to last a few minutes in a fight against him. Kurama was such a broken cheetah man. 9 tails op, a nerf. I'd rather whoever you're pleading to didn't. Isabu rolled his eyes. That overpowered strength will be vital in the future if things go to hell as you saw. Well, yeah, but Kurama was a real dark spot. There was nothing Daiki could do to get him to cooperate with Naruto. His arrogance and hatred was just that high up there. It would be up to Naruto himself to win Kurama over. If he even could this time around. The best Daiki himself could do, was maybe teach Naruto how to use his powers as a Jinchuriki. And that won't be a simple issue either, Isabu pointed out. After all, I'm fully working together with you. He will have to wrestle mentally with Kurama to control the chakra and resist my brother's attempts to send him into a blood rage that will attack anything in sight. Single quote ellipsis dot. Have I mentioned how much I love you, buddy? Daiki replied. Seriously, he was so glad he didn't need to deal with anything like that. Fake and gay. The huge turtle Beiyu snorted. How can it be gay if you don't have a dick? Daiki squawked, surprised at the internet meme suddenly thrown his way. A dead one at that. Watching your memories through your subconscious and learning about your former culture is a good way to pass the time. Isabu was completely unrepentant. Also, going by the logic of the culture in your former life, I identify as male. No, Daiki replied simply. I do have to say though, your taste in literature and these anime, you liked to watch shows. Your poor taste. The 3-tailed Beiyu ignored him and continued on. You watched so much of these harem shows because of girls, but ground your teeth in a rage over the main characters because of how spineless they were. I suppose your lust for voluptuous girls and the childish dream of a harem overpowered your sheer dislike, especially of this, who was it again? Tom Alo. Yes, that's his name, Daiki replied instantly, blocking out any thought otherwise. Also again, we're not doing this. So he disliked that the wimps that were never proactive or improved on themselves at all got all these grader girls to themselves. Sue him. He wasn't alone in that taste. Rosario Vampire just happened to be the first ever harem series he watched through. His biggest problem with them was that they were supposed to be your average Joe. But they weren't. He was an average Joe in his other life. And he was nowhere near as pitiful as those clowns. Ho, are you embarrassed? How amusing. If I knew bringing up your horrible taste in entertainment was enough to do this, I would have done it much sooner. Isabu laughed, amused, though if it makes you feel better, I do believe you are much superior to the likes of this Tom Alo. You know, it didn't make him feel better. That was like saying he was more interesting than a dog's turd, covered in flies, and having been baked under the sun for an entire day. I think I'll get started working on my new seal. He nodded to himself. He had 2 days now until the preliminaries started. He was eager to add the power of Shisui's Sharingan to his Shinkugan. Isabu's laughter echoed in his head, distracting him. Damned turtle bro. The Sharingan now in his grasp, Daiki threw himself fully into developing his new seal. It was going to be the greatest seal he'd crafted yet. Using everything he'd learned, combining much of the powerful seals he'd learned together. Taking not only from the 4 symbols seal, but his chakra filter seal, the chakra absorption seal, the dimension force seal, the life force conversion seal and even the base makeup seal matrix of his heavenly star seal. It might have sounded simple, claiming he was more or less combining them. But it wasn't. Not even close. For one, making them fit together, was a challenge in of itself. And that wasn't taking account of the fact he needed to break down each and every seal matrix and pick and choose the right parts of each seal to conjoin together, in the process having to edit to make it mesh with other seals. A day and a half later of constant poring over the seals, experimentation, research and trying things out, and he was barely any closer than when he started. This won't work, Daiki groaned, tossing aside a huge rolled-out scroll, a seal attempt scribbled on the middle. It landed on the pile of other duds. The pile that was now taller than him. Daiki rubbed at his eyes. This is even more complicated than I thought it was going to be, he huffed. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, of course. But he'd still seriously underestimated the sheer scale of what he was doing. And that wasn't taking into account the fact that he was going to be putting the seal on something as small as an eyeball. There was a limit, after all, to just how much a sealing matrix could be locked and miniaturized. But it was worth the effort. Or rather once he managed it, because he would have access to all the abilities of the Sharingan. Enhanced perception, increased prediction ability, technique copying. And that was just the base. Above that, he would have access to Shisui's Mangekyu Sharingan. Putting aside his bullshit mind control genjutsu, there was his Susanoo. With the Susanoo, he could perform the majestic attire Susanoo with Aisabu in his full Biju mode. On top of that, he could create even more armor with chakra with the mysterious peacock method. With all that stacked on top of Aisabu's absurdly durable shell, there would be few ever capable of breaking through the defenses. They would become an unbreakable wall, the tankiest of all tanks. His stomach growled, breaking him from his delusions of grandeur. Ugh, I need something to eat. Daiki groaned, grasping his stomach. How long had it been since he last ate? 9.5 hours. Aisabu, helpfully informed. Ugh, that long. While he could go longer without food if needed, he was expending a lot of chakra with his clones training and the seal attempts, plus concentrating with all he had. Thus, his stomach got more growly faster. His eyes drifted over to the nightstand he'd pulled back out of his Dimension Force seal, where a few empty plates were piled up. He'd sent a clone out every so often to bring him back some grub to munch on. He needed his vital proteins after all for his epic muscles. Now that he reviewed the memories he'd gotten from said clones, it seemed Ino and her team had finished the exam not long ago. Well, not long was relative because he wasn't exactly sure how long ago that was. He'd noticed them in the mess hall, and stopped to say hi and the like. Ino had been totally red-faced when he did. Temari had given him dirty looks when his clone flirted with Ino a bit, while Tenten had ignored him entirely. Ouch. And his clone had caught sight of Kakashi, Asuma, Kurenai and a few other jonin arriving at the tower when he was out just browsing around with his eyes. His clone had felt his frustration, it seemed, and had been tempted to go see about banging Kurenai. Good thing he didn't. Those memories would have totally distracted him from his seal experimentation. The path of the horny was no good for this kind of thing. Though maybe getting my rocks off could clear my head a bit, he mused. There was a knock at his door, making him pause. Maybe that's Kurenai now, he mused, perking up. Chakra flooded into his eyes and he peered through the door, only to sigh in disappointment when he found himself looking at a familiar orange book-toting one-eyed scarecrow wannabe. Kakashi. Why would it have been Kurenai, you dunce? The woman has tried her best to distance herself from you, lest she get roped back into your embrace. Aisabu asked. For that reason, she's the one that keeps coming back for more. Daiki shrugged. Standing up, Daiki stretched out the stiffness in his joints and walked over to the door, pulling it open. Yo, Daiki-chan. Kakashi greeted him with a perky eye smile and wave. Go away, I'm busy. Daiki responded flatly. He had no desire to get involved with Kakashi. Whatever the man wanted, it was going to be, to borrow a word from Shikamaru and his clan, troublesome. Fuck that noise. Or, you think you have a choice? How cute, Kakashi giggled. Still, is that any way to talk to a good mentor-like figure such as myself? Technically, Kakashi did have authority over him, since he was a genin and Kakashi was, an elite jonin. Daiki could also technically transform into his Beiyu mode and Bayudama the man out of existence. He was just saying that was all. When I get Shisui's Sharingan working right, I'm going to copy and steal all your jutsu. Daiki mentally vowed, while out loud he said, since when are you a good mentor figure? I've taught your team more jutsu than you. He deadpanned. What can I say? I'm a trendsetter. I'm so hip and cool I don't need to teach personally. They just learn from my example. Kakashi shrugged, not missing a beat. Ugh. How he hated dealing with this guy. Probably because he's one of the few people that can be as obnoxious as you. Isabu commented. Daiki ignored him. He was nowhere near as obnoxious as Kakashi after all. Honestly, with that imagination of yours, it's a shame you don't focus on genjutsu. You'd be an undefeated master of it. Isabu snorted. Silly turtle bro. He just didn't understand that Daiki was a really down-to-earth, kind, generous and extraordinarily humble guy. If he wasn't, he'd be crowing from the rooftops, boasting for all he was worth and rubbing all his achievements in everybody's faces. He was fucking amazing after all. Totally. That's the complete opposite of humble. Just because you don't say it out loud doesn't change that. Isabu groaned. Daiki gave an internal shrug. He disagreed. What do you want? He asked the virgin porn peddler on the other side of his room door. A new Ika Ika book, an Ika Ika movie, the Mizukage to star in the Ika Ika movie, guy to stop wearing that horrible leotard, more new Ika Ika books. Kakashi began rattling off. No, enough, you're not as funny as you think you are, bro. Daiki cut him off. Pot meat kettle. I'm funny, you're just not smart enough to understand my humor, kid. Kakashi shrugged. Anyway, Sasuke, Naruto and Sakura finished the exam not long ago. Daiki blinked. That was news to him. He glanced behind him to a clock on the wall of his provided room. There's still a good 12 hours before the next part of the exams start, he noted. They finished faster than they did in the other timeline, it seemed. Good for them. Good for them. What does that have to do with me? Daiki responded. Well, it's twofold. Naruto's exhausted and sleeping it off right now, the man informed, but Sasuke and Sakura are different. Sakura has broken her wrists and medical staff won't intervene right now for the exams unless it's life-threatening, to keep things fair and all. Oh yeah, Tenten did say something about that, didn't she? Though, he didn't know that the medical staff weren't going to intervene and heal people right now. That was odd, though it did explain partially why Tenten came to him to heal Lee instead of taking him to the infirmary. You want me to heal her then? Daiki cottoned on. See, you're not as dumb as you look after all. Kakashi's eyes smile got bigger. Somehow, and as for Sasuke, well, I'm sure you already know why I'm bringing him up. The Hokage tells me you jumped in when he had a little run-in with a certain snaky snake man after all and managed to grasp quite a bit about the cursed seal. Insulting my looks just shows how much of a jealous virgin you are. Tinyashi Peniscate, Daiki shot back, before smirking and crossing his arms. So you came to see me not only to heal one of your genin, but also to help deal with a seal you don't understand at all. I see. Not much of an elite jonin are you. Of course, he left out the fact that it was just pure luck and outside world knowledge that let him understand the cursed seal itself. You seem to have a fascination with my sexual exploits and penis. Sorry kid, I'm not into dudes, no matter how much steroids they pump into their muscles. Kakashi shrugged off his words easily. But I have no problem sealing off the cursed seal myself. It was the Hokage that told me to have you tag along. And as for Sakura, well, healing jutsu were never my forte. Medical ninja like yourself are a bit squishy and need to hang at the back as support, unlike a super powerful front-line fighter like myself. Daiki resisted the urge to click his tongue in annoyance. Just means the Hokage has more faith in me than you, which is telling really. Weren't you taught by the fourth Hokage, one of the greatest seal masters like ever? He fired, and frontline fighter, that's a laugh. Can people that can't last 15 minutes in a proper fight be qualified for that role? Does someone have a small chakra capacity? He smirked tauntingly. Bigger than yours. Kakashi didn't miss a beat, and Daiki had to force his eyebrow not to twitch. Anyway, as much as I love this little game of ours, kid, I'm afraid I don't really have the time to indulge your poor attempts at flirting with me, so what will it cost me to move this little shindig along? I'd like to have Sasuke and Sakura ready for the next part of the exams. Honestly, he didn't really need payment. He was just shooting the shit and giving the guy a hard time because he was a prick. Sasuke was his friend and Sakura was eye candy. Teasing the pair of them, in totally different ways, sounded like a fun time right about now as far as breaks went. Still, that didn't mean he wouldn't extort Kakashi with the option available to him. And he knew exactly what he wanted from the man. Tell me how you trained your Ninken summons and I'll do it, he replied. He'd ask for a lightning jutsu, but this was more worth to him right now. The thing was, he wouldn't really need them soon. At least from Kakashi. He'd be learning from the third Hokage himself over the next month. That man was sure to know plenty of lightning jutsu he could teach Daiki. Ha, figured you'd ask for a lightning jutsu. Kakashi blinked, then shrugged. Sure, fine with me, kid. I'll write down how I did it and give you it later. Good. Daiki smirked. Where's your team then? He asked. He may as well get right to it. Sakura is with Naruto in their room, Kakashi replied. As for Sasuke, he's waiting right now for me. He was allowed to get checked at the infirmary because of the cursed seal. I'll be taking him to a specific room soon to apply the evil sealing method to it. I'm sure you'll be able to find your way there with those eyes of yours once you're done with Sakura. Right. Just point me towards their room for now then. Daiki shrugged. The evil sealing method, huh? He mused inwardly. That was one he hadn't been able to find an example of. So he could learn all about it from watching Kakashi and see if there was any parts of it he could put to use for himself. After letting Daiki know which room Sakura and Naruto currently occupied, Kakashi cheerily disappeared with a shunshin, off to go, most likely take the piss out of Sasuke while they waited on him to heal up Sakura. That guy's good. Daiki begrudgingly accepted. He had a counter for literally everything the Tan Genin threw at him, verbally at least. He'd have to work on his material if he wanted to rinse the crap out of the famous copy ninja, it seemed. Just another thing to add to the grind. As always, the grind was eternal. Putting Kakashi out of mind, Daiki made his way towards the room he was directed to, down the hall. Team 7 it seemed had picked a room near the middle. Not that they would get to enjoy it much. It seemed there was only roughly 12 hours or so before the second round ended and the third round began. Then again, the rooms were utter crap anyway. Stopping in front of the door, he rapped it with his knuckles. He probably could have just walked in and gave Sakura a good startling for a laugh, but he had manners. Sometimes. Hey, come in, Sakura's voice called out, echoing from behind the door. Accepting the invitation, Daiki opened the door and stepped in, shutting it behind him. He was immediately greeted by loud snoring. Naruto was in the bed closest the bathroom, fast asleep, sprawled out messily, drool trickling from his mouth, down his chin and onto the pillow he was snuggling. Sakura herself was sitting at the edge of the middle bed, both arms held together in a set of slings made from bandages. Daiki, she blinked, looking surprised to see him. What are you doing here? What do you think I'm doing here? He raised an eyebrow at her. I'm obviously here to check in on my favorite pink-haired lady friend. I'm the only pink-haired girl you know. It's not exactly a common hair color, she replied, giving him a deadpan look. That you know of, he shrugged. Actually, was there any other pink-haired girls around? He actually couldn't remember any. The closest was probably Tayuya or Karen. Sakura sighed. If you're just here to tease me, I'm kind of not in the mood, she replied, then gave him a small glare. Besides, I'm still not happy with you. You felt me up and slapped me on the ass before running off, she reminded him. I did indeed. Good times, Daiki nodded sagely, but, as fun as riling you up is, I'm not actually here to annoy you for funsies. She raised a skeptical eyebrow. Aha, and what are you here for then? He raised one of his own eyebrows at her in response, before forming a single hand seal, warm green healing chakra coating his hands. He gave the healing chakra an obvious glance, before looking her in the eyes. Oh. Sakura blinked in realization. Wait, how did you know I was injured? She questioned. He was tempted to tell her he'd saw them through the walls and mess with her a bit. See if she'd gotten nude at all while in this room and get her all embarrassed. But, it was probably better to heal her first, then tease her. Priorities and all that. He walked over and sat on the bed beside her. Kakashi stopped by and told me. Daiki replied, though, I already knew you were injured before he came along. I heard you did good in the forest, even took out one of those sound genin. How do you know that? The pink-haired girl asked, before blinking and freezing. Wait, were you watching? Nope, Tenten told me. Her replied, turn around to face me. Oh, the bun-haired girl on Lee Son's team? She asked, and did as he said, sitting fully up on the bed and turning to face him, crossing her legs. That's the one. I actually finished up not long after I left you guys. I got bored since there was nobody interesting to fight. Daiki replied with a shrug, before reaching over, hovering his hands over hers and directing the green healing chakra into them. There was an immediate reaction. Sakura sighed in relief as the mystical palm jutsu numbed the pain in her arms. And Daiki whistled as he got a good look at the damage she'd done to herself. Her wrists were snapped, of course, but beyond that, there were multiple fractures spreading up from her hands to through her forearms. Better. He grinned at her. Much, thanks. She smiled, her face seeming to be much less strained now. And I really do need to thank you for the jutsu you gave me. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to beat that bitchy sound girl and they might have killed us before Sasuke-kun woke up. Not a problem, I'm a generous guy like that. He waved off her thanks, before his grin turned impish, though if you're dead set on thanking me, I'm a big fan of lap dances. Sakura sighed, and you ruined it. Hey, at least I'm consistent. He shrugged it off. Besides, I'm mostly joking anyway. While I'd love a lap dance from you and that awesome ass of yours, I'm just giving you a hard time for a laugh. No, I think a hard time is exactly what you want to give me. She responded, voice dry, eyebrows raising almost challengingly at him. He blinked, actually surprised and almost taken aback by Sakura throwing some innuendo his way. Sakura with the banter. Ha. Nice. Well, you're not wrong. Daiki laughed. I'd love to give you a real hard time. All night long, in fact. I'm free right now, in fact, if you're up for it. You're such a pervert, she snorted, shaking her head. Honestly, you should be more careful. What would you do if I accepted? And no, fucking me isn't an acceptable answer. I'm talking about after that fact. Daiki opened his mouth to respond, before pausing. He wasn't at all expecting her to be so blunt about it. That his shtick. And also because he actually didn't have an answer for that. Railing her into the bed and making her scream his name to the heavens was one thing. But the after fact was something different. For one, he couldn't promise her anything. Because he'd already more or less lined things up with Tenten to see about how their relationship would progress. That's my point. Sakura rolled her eyes, breaking him from his thoughts. You know, you gave me some hard truths about Sasuke-kun and my naive thoughts about loving him in the forest, but isn't this more a case of the pot calling the kettle black now? You flirt so freely with girls, spread your attention all around but can't focus on just one. Then again, maybe you aren't interested in love or a relationship and just want to sleep around. I'm not really interested in that. This took a turn he was not at all expecting. Sense and logic, his greatest weaknesses. How did she know? It actually took him a few moments to organize his thoughts in response. Honestly, you're only half right, Daiki replied, sighing. Do I want to sleep around? Yes, Most guys our age do, but it doesn't mean I'm not interested in a relationship. I'm testing the waters myself, to see who I mesh well with. Also, he was kind of surprised about how reasonable she was being about her infatuation with Sasuke. He kind of expected her to dig her heels in more. She'd spent years thinking she was head over heels for the guy after all. Granted, in the other timeline, she realized that her infatuation was utterly childish and not real love if he remembered right. And her infatuation turned into real affection later despite Sasuke being a traitor. And she was already older here than there. Still, I'm more surprised of you even talking about the possibility even being there, he pointed out. What, with you liking Sasuke and all? Guess we're both just a couple of hypocrites then, Sakura snorted derisively. What can I say? Those hard truths of yours hit home. You apparently know far more about Sasuke-kun than I do. You're closer to him than I've ever been and probably ever will be, and I'm not even his type at all. It's funny how a single little fight to the death with enemy ninja can put things into perspective, and it just got my mind wandering. About, he prompted, raising an eyebrow at her in interest. A few things, she shrugged. How useless and weak I am compared to Naruto and Sasuke-kun. How I've not been serious enough at all, thinking back to bad decisions I made around Sasuke-kun. You. His second eyebrow joined the first. His interest totally peaked now. Me. Daiki repeated in askance. Pretty emerald green eyes stared into his own and Sakura gave him a half smile. Sasuke-kun never showed an ounce of interest in me looking back, no matter what I did, she replied. You did though. Actually you couldn't make your interest any more blatant. You're good looking, strong, successful, help me out. Even if you're a pervert about it. So yeah, my mind wandered and I thought, what if I tried going after you instead? Well, this was unexpected. Not at all unwelcome though. Of course, then I remembered, you mostly just seem to want to bed me, she continued with a shrug, then snorted, and I realized how shallow I was being. I'm mostly playing it for a laugh, Daiki sighed and responded seriously. This wasn't really the time for jokes. Sure, I do want to bed you if I'm being totally honest, but that's just instinct 'cause you're hot. You're not perfect, but nobody is, to be honest. You've got your problems, but I can already see them easing out of you. Actually, right now, he felt more like he was dealing with Shippuden Sakura, rather than the pre-time skip one. Age-wise, she was only a few months off of Shippuden Sakura was at the beginning, and despite having the outfit of her pre-time skip self, she was looking more like her Shippuden self as well, especially now that her hair was cut short. It was what? October now. If he remembered right, her birthday was in March, so she was 6 months from being 15. Sakura chuckled lightly. Now see, if you were serious like this all the time, then I might have went all in and chased you, she teased. That'd be so boring though. Daiki laughed along. I did the serious thing before, remember. All through the academy, in fact. Life is much more fun now that I've changed things up. They fell into easy, more comfortable conversation after that while he continued healing her. He asked mostly about what went on with them in the forest after he left behind and got more or less the full story of what went down. Which more or less lined up with what he already knew and what Tenten told him. After that, they took the sound team's Earth Scroll and continued on, struggling here and there, before they ran into Kabuto, who had been separated from his team. And from there, things progressed as he remembered, with them running into one of the other rain teams, Sasuke being unable to do anything. The same with Sakura since she was injured, with broken wrists and all, and Naruto carrying them to victory. Though he apparently had a much easier time of winning this time around and defeated them within around 10 minutes apparently. Probably because he didn't have to worry about his chakra being fucked from the 5 elemental seal. Daiki mused inwardly. And also because he was apparently able to box in the Rain Shinobi's clones with the Earth style barrier, making it easy to catch 'em out and tell they were all fakes. Before he knew it, over a half hour passed and he finally finished up healing her, taking care of both the broken wrists and the fractures going from her hands to up her forearms. Medical ninjutsu is Really amazing. My arms feel pretty much fully healed. Sakura flexed her hands after removing her slings once he was done. Yeah, it's super helpful. Daiki nodded. I've taken care of all your injuries, but your arms might be a little tender, so don't strain them too much for the next little while and just rest up until the next exam starts. Alright, I'll do that, she nodded, before eyeing her hands thoughtfully. Hey. Do you think I'd be able to learn medical ninjutsu as well? Yep, Daiki replied instantly. Sakura blinked. That was fast, she noted, looking surprised. I know how good you are, he shrugged. I don't doubt you'd be able to learn medical ninjutsu pretty easily. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if you had a real talent for it. Maybe you could even rival Tsunade one day if you go for it. Of course, he already knew she did and could do so. She had the potential to be the best medic ninja in the world, rivaled only by Tsunade herself. Her cheeks took on a red flush at his words. You think so? She asked. Not a doubt in me, he confirmed with a grin. The flush got deeper, and a pretty smile spread across her face. See, you can be charming when you want to be. Sakura teased, a slight giggle escaping her. What do you mean? I'm always charming. Daiki's grin widened and he gave her a wink. Only you think that. She shook her head, and looked up at him, pretty smile aimed straight at him. Thanks. Not a problem. Getting some alone time with you is a pretty fair deal in Exa. He was cut off by a resounding snore coming from a certain spiky-haired blonde. Well, mostly alone. He amended. Sakura looked over her shoulder and gave the sleeping blonde a dry look. Well, he's earned the rest, I guess. He really pulled through for us there at the end, she mused before turning back to look at Daiki, and I wouldn't mind doing this again sometime. Hit me up whenever you want. Daiki shrugged. I can even help you get started on learning medical ninjutsu if you want. Let me guess, in return for a lap dance. The pink-haired girl's pretty smile turned teasing. Well, I definitely wouldn't say no, he grinned. Her teasing grin just got wider. I'll think about it, she responded, stepping forward and surprising him by standing on her tiptoes and pressing a kiss against his cheek. Right now though, I've got doctor's orders to rest, so I'm going to sleep a bit, so it's time for you to go bye-bye. Or I could join you. He wiggled his eyebrows. There'd be no sleeping or resting involved then, I'm afraid, right? She snorted, stepping by him and opening the door. So bye-bye for now, perv boy. Fair enough, he chuckled, turning around and leaving out of the door. Just before he stepped past her though, he reached out faster than she could react, and took a nice big handful of her ass and squeezed, just grabbing my payment. He grinned widely. He was expecting to have to dodge a punch, but instead, Sakura barely reacted at all. And merely raised an eyebrow at him. I knew you were gonna do that, she snorted. And yet she didn't try to stop him, and wasn't attempting to remove his hand. He gave her full, round-ass cheek another hefty grope, grin widening. Sakura sighed. If you leave that hand there much longer, I'm keeping it, she told him dryly. He gave her ass another nice squeeze, getting a feel for the bouncy cheek filling his palm, before letting go. I'm tempted to let you, but sadly, that annoying guy Kakashi needs me to do something else for him. He huffed, stepping outside into the hallway. That's too bad. Sakura suddenly pouted at him, leaning on the door. I was kind of liking that there and was thinking of giving you that lap dance. And another confirmation that a kunoichi could give a lap dance. Seriously, what did they teach in those kunoichi-only classes? But more importantly, really. His eyes lit up excitedly. Yeah, no, you're not that lucky, buddy. Sakura snorted, and promptly shut the door in his face. That's not nice, Sakura. He called through the door. I'm soaked with sweat and this thong I'm wearing is just digging in. I should really take it off, Tilda. Her voice echoed back, definitely teasingly. That's not fair. That's not fair at all. He of course could just peek through the door and wall themselves with his Shinkugan. But that would mean he lost. Fucking Kakashi. Daiki huffed, mustering his mighty grind-enhanced willpower and self-control and walking away. It wasn't really the copy ninja's fault. But it just felt good to blame it on Kakashi. What most of the people currently visiting the tower in the middle of the Forest of Death probably didn't know was that the tower itself had a basement level. Daiki himself wouldn't have known about it either, if not for the fact he could literally see through any solid object with but a glance with his Shinkugan. So a sweeping look revealed it to him during his first day in the tower. And another sweeping glance with his eyes after he left Sakura behind revealed to him that the basement level was exactly where Kakashi and Sasuke were. Honestly, finding the door to the basement took more time than finding their whereabouts. He even stopped a passing Chunin patrolling the halls about it, who had no idea what he was talking about. As it was, it took him a few minutes to locate the door. Fucking Kakashi. Couldn't that lazy prick do anything helpful? Oh Daiki, by the way, the door is located over there. That was all he needed to say, but no, as always, he had to make things way more difficult than they needed to be. Because he was a prick. There wasn't even any stairs, just an inclined little hill kind of thing. It was subtle as all hell, to the point where he missed it a few times when searching with his eyes. The basement level itself was odd. It was really only one big massive room, filled with pillars going up into the ceiling. He had no idea what purpose this place served at all. Granted, he also didn't really care. Though with all the huge, sturdy pillars around, his best guess was that it was a place used for chaining up huge beasts. Which made a slight bit of sense considering all the massive beasts in the Forest of Death. Though the why still eluded him. He found Sasuke and Kakashi quite quickly, making his way through the huge basement level room towards them. His eyes revealed to him though, that there was a fourth in the room. Hidden underground, not far away from Sasuke and Kakashi, their presence completely concealed. Daiki hid a grimace. Fucking Orochimaru. He made sure not to look directly at the man or stare and give away that he knew he was there. He didn't want to spook the man into action. With what he revealed the other day, he might feel his plans were jeopardized and try to kidnap Sasuke right here and now. His serpentine yellow gaze followed him with interest, and Daiki ignored him as best he could as he made his way over to his friend and the copy prick. Shit, I didn't even consider that. Daiki cursed inwardly. He'd left Sasuke and his team behind in the forest, after showing he was capable of destroying Orochimaru's soul fragment in the cursed seal. He hadn't even considered the fact that the man might just have taken Sasuke because of Daiki, and not risk losing his future vessel. Stupid of him. He'd need to think things through a bit more. He was lucky this time, but the consequences of his actions needed to be understood more. He put that out of mind for now though as he approached the student and teacher pair waiting for him. Well, if it isn't little Timmy. And the would-be criminal. Daiki said in greeting as he reached them. It was an odd sight. While Kakashi was the same as usual, Sasuke knelt within a ceiling circle on the ground, shirtless. Lines of ceiling kanji were painted all over his torso, leading down like chains onto the ground, going on for a few feet, before reaching up and spreading across multiple pillars. So this was the evil sealing method seal array. Or rather it was extended compression seals, spread out over a larger surface to make it easier to compress the seal matrix onto a smaller target. It showed Kakashi's lack of skill when it came to sealing, because just from a cursory glance, he already had a decent understanding of the evil sealing method. I could apply this with only a fraction of the space, he mused. But this was something he hadn't considered. Using an amateur's tool, which would be akin to someone tracing another drawing and calling themselves an artist in scale, to apply a seal. With this method, I could use it to compress the seals for my eyes, he mused. I think he's talking to you, Sasuke. Kakashi mused, idly turning a page in his smutty book. Just ignore it. He says random crap that nobody understands all the damn time. Sasuke rolled his onyx eyes, and looked to Daiki, a frown on his lips. TCH, so you are totally fine, unlike me apparently. Sakura told you then? He asked in reply. Yes. Sasuke clicked his tongue. Told me you shook off the pain of that seal unlike me real quick and then made it your own. even used the power boost it gave you to blow that Orochimaru guy away. Well, almost right. If it was that easy to kill him, he wouldn't have lasted to this point. He escaped my jutsu without any problem. Daiki shrugged. As for the cursed seal, well, let's just say that I'm just built different from you, he added, and gave Sasuke a pointed look before touching his thumb to the right side of his chest. Sasuke's eyes widened minutely, before he quickly smothered his surprised look, returning to his usual impassive expression. I see. His frown deepened. Kakashi looked up from his book at their silent conversation, before shrugging. So, the Hokage tells me you have a way of not only dealing with the problems of the cursed seal, making it safe to use, but also improving upon it. Well, obviously the old man would tell Kakashi about it. Not quite. I've made my own safe to use and improved upon it. In fact, by my estimates, the power boost it gives me has been increased by a bit over 50%, Daiki replied. The problem is, the way I made it safe for me, isn't something I can replicate for anyone else. Kakashi's eyebrow raised and he gave him a searching look. If the Hokage told him of this, no doubt he told him of the fact that he could in fact do something about the Orochimaru soul fragment in other seals as well. He was just holding off on it for now. Drop it for now. Daiki projected his chakra into a message and directed it into Kakashi's mind. Well, that's disappointing, Kakashi mused. You're really quite useless here then, huh? He needled. Like you're one to talk. Look at the mess of this sealing array. Daiki scoffed. I could get this seal down in a few hours and apply it with just my chakra, and you're supposed to be a student of the Yondaime Hokage, one of the greatest sealing experts to ever live, probably the best outside of the Uzumaki clan period. Uzumaki clan. Sasuke's eyes widened a bit. He seemed a bit shocked to learn of such a thing. Yeah, extinct now except for a few like Naruto, but we used to be allies with them. In fact, we still wear their symbol. Daiki jabbed his thumb at Kakashi's flak jacket, pointing to where the Uzumaki swirl was displayed proudly. They were known for having absurd vitality, powerful chakra and stamina, and being absolute monsters when it came to the sealing arts. As in so good they even make me look like an amateur, and I'm pretty fucking amazing. Absurd vitality, powerful chakra and stamina, huh? Just like Naruto. Sasuke mused thoughtfully. Yup, honestly, odds are, Naruto might be the last of his clan like you. Daiki pointed out. Actually, I know you're a shit teacher and all, Kakashi, but why haven't you tried to at least get him started on the basics? He might be a spastic, but his actual talent is only something an idiot would miss. You seem to know a lot about the Uzumaki clan and Naruto in general. Kakashi pointed out instead of answering. Always with the run around with this prick. Our alliance with the Uzumaki clan is well established in older textbooks, and what clown would pursue the sealing arts without knowing of the foremost masters of the art? Daiki replied with a shrug. Hell, you don't even need to teach him yourself. If you just told him he had a clan and they specialized in seals, he'd pursue it himself. That was just how much the blonde desired family, that even for just a connection to his clan he'd pursue it all. Just didn't occur to me. Kakashi waved him off blandly. This guy. Ignore Kakashi. I'll tell him about it once this exam is done, so he doesn't obsess over it in the next round. Sasuke cut in. Now enough of this crap, can we get a move on here? You two might be having fun bantering like fools, but I'm not having a good time kneeling here with my own blood painted all over me. You're such a spoil sport, Sasuke. Kakashi pouted. But, I suppose since your little friend is utterly useless, we can get a move on. Don't Bayudama him. Don't Bayudama him. I want to fucking Bayudama him. Daiki's eye twitched in annoyance. He'd even be pragmatic about it and fire it in the direction of Orochimaru while he was at it. Get rid of two annoying pricks for one Bayu bomb. And everybody won. Except Kakashi and Orochimaru. But who cared about them? You'd also blow away the entire tower, and much of the surrounding area. Isabu added his input. That was a sacrifice he was willing to make as long as it shut Kakashi the fuck up for a bit. Alright, brace yourself, Sasuke, this might sting a bit. Kakashi said, stowing his book away and walking over to stand behind Sasuke and ran through a few hand seals. Just get on with, Sasuke began, only to be cut off by Kakashi. Evil sealing method, Kakashi declared, finishing his hand seals and pressing his hand flat against the cursed seal on Sasuke's neck. The Uchiha's onyx eyes went wide and a howl of agony erupted from his throat almost immediately, his body beginning to convulse. The sealing kanji spread out over his back, the floor and the pillars began glowing and retracted from the pillars, shrinking from the floor and retreating up onto his back. In moments it was over, the massive lines of kanji gone, and replaced by a ring of sealing kanji circling around the cursed seal on Sasuke's neck. Kakashi pulled his hand from Sasuke's back, and the boy slumped over onto the ground, sweating profusely and panting deeply and rapidly, eyes wide. So, even if the cursed seal awakens again, this seal will suppress it, Kakashi began explaining nonchalantly, though Sasuke, the foundation of this seal is your own willpower, you have to want it to work and not be led astray by the temptation of the cursed seal's power. If you give in and rely on its power, the evil sealing method will be useless, so, blah, blah blah. Daiki cut him off, rolling his eyes. Sasuke, if you rely on the seal, Orochimaru will brainwash you and take over your body, so don't just be a little bitch. I already owned this bitch-ass seal and made it my own. You can't because you're too weak and unskilled, that's it, so if you have to rely on it, it just means you're a weak piece of trash in the end and you'll never come close to Itachi. Honestly, Kakashi didn't understand Sasuke at all. The best way to make him not rely on the cursed seal was to bitch slap his pride and rub his balls all over it. Sasuke scoffed at his words, a smirk spreading across his face at Daiki's words. Look at you acting all high and mighty just because you've got a crappy seal that gives you a little power boost, he said. Don't forget who you're speaking to, loser. Even with that seal, your eyes and all your other little advantages, I'll still beat your ass in a fight. Daiki crouched down in front of the other boy and smirked. Tough talk, let's see you prove it, he replied. I'll wait for you in the finals, try and keep up. Hey. K. It'll be fun to see you talking so big when I'm punching your face in. Sasuke began replying, even as his eyes dimmed and his consciousness left him. Before his face could smack into the ground, Daiki caught him and hoisted his friend up onto his shoulder. He'd keep him safe himself. If Orochimaru tried to go for him and take him now, he'd blow him away full power. While he wanted to keep his status as a Jinchuriki hidden, he was surprised to find that he wouldn't hesitate to unleash his full power as the Sanbi Jinchuriki alongside his heavenly star seal to keep him safe from Orochimaru. When did I become such a fool? He wondered idly. It really was odd. Initially, he only planned to use these people and Konoha as a whole to make sure he survived the coming apocalypse. But somewhere along the way, he'd come to respect and care for them. Kukukuku. A familiar hissing laugh echoed through the underground basement. Now wasn't that an interesting little show? Kakashi's eyes widened and he immediately fell into a ready stance, pushing up his headband. Daiki, don't move from my side, he said, utterly serious. It was an interesting change from the Kakashi he was used to dealing with. And it seemed he hadn't at all sensed Orochimaru until the man decided to introduce himself. From behind one of the pillars, the pale snake-faced man, dressed in what looked like a Konoha Jonin uniform, made his way out, though it was different. Where Konoha's base was a dark blue, this was a pale purple, and the flak jacket a grayish blue. He'd outright copied the uniform of Konoha for his Sound Village, it seemed. Kakashi-kun, it seems you've even dabbled in the sealing arts these days. Impressive. Orochimaru's eyes gleamed as he looked from Kakashi to meet Daiki's own eyes. And Daiki-kun, so good to see you again. He licked his lips with a long, snake-like tongue. Yeah, nice to see you not frozen over and charred by lightning, I suppose. Daiki replied blandly, before smirking. If I were you, I'd toddle off, because I won't hold back this time. He added, and as he did, he pulled not only on the heavenly star seal, but also Isabu's chakra. Lightning-like marks spread across his body, and the whites of his eyes shimmered and turned into a ringed purple. This was more or less the same setup he had against Orochimaru in the forest before. But now, he was even stronger. Not only was his base form a decent bit stronger from the energy from the fragment of Gelul, but even the Heavenly Star Seal gave a much improved boost compared to the Cursed Seal. In fact, with the Star Chakra and Gelul energy amplifying it, it was close to double the strength, at least hovering around the 1.75 times mark. So 75% stronger boost-wise. The boost it gave was near enough comparable to two of Aisabu's base chakra cloak tails. With it and his initial Jinchuriki stage, he was around the same strength right now as back when he used the hero's water. Orochimaru didn't bat an eye at his threat, instead his eyes seemed to brighten with interest, so Kakashi was not lying when he said you improved upon the Cursed Seal. How interesting, he hummed, you really are quite the specimen Daiki-kun Kakuku. Surprisingly, before Daiki could reply to the snake Sannin, Kakashi stepped in front of him, cutting the man's vision from him, glaring at Orochimaru. So not only Sasuke, but Daiki has your interest as well, huh? Kakashi huffed, tell me Orochimaru, what do you plan to gain from all this? Why go after Sasuke? Daiki felt the urge to roll his eyes. There was only one thing Sasuke had that Orochimaru wanted. It was obvious, hell he'd already told the Hokage and the like what he wanted. He supposed Kakashi didn't get the memo. That, or he was fishing for more information. Oh, you know how it is. Two guys have it already and this third one just has to have it, cuckoo. Orochimaru laughed lightly. 3 I suppose if you're counted, and all things considered, it hasn't been all that long since you were given it by your dearly departed little friend. So that's it then, Kakashi replied, voice monotone. Indeed, it's the Sharingan. Orochimaru revealed, spreading his arms wide, grandiosely, but pardon my rudeness, I have no interest in you Kakashi-kun, unlike Sasuke-kun, you're useless to me I'm afraid, I have no need of an imperfect Sharingan user. Well obviously, Daiki scoffed, if it was just about implanting the Sharingan like Kakashi, you could have raided the corpses of the Uchiha ages ago and got it like that. You want the natural ability to use it like an actual Uchiha, and for that you need to have the body of an Uchiha. Orochimaru's eyes lit up. Indeed. So intelligent aren't you Daiki-kun? He hissed, seeming very pleased by his words. Unfortunately, all the Uchiha are now dead, beyond Itachi and Sasuke-kun, and I'm sure you understand why I'd target Sasuke-kun. Because you're too scared to face Itachi. Daiki taunted. He was looking for a rise out of the man, to break that amused facade and see about making him sloppy by attacking his pride. Orochimaru just chuckled. Well, you're still but a young lad Daiki-kun, all that talent and power doesn't change that, he replied in amusement, subduing Itachi and taking his body, is much more of a challenge than taking young Sasuke-kun from the Leaf Village. It's just that simple, and I'm quite the pragmatic man you see. His taunt washed over him like a pitiful stream against a mountain and was turned aside. Daiki clicked his tongue. Taunting was useless, what about insults then? So you're just a coward then looking for easy prey, he shrugged, but this isn't an orphanage Pedomaru, so I suggest you walk away before I might break my foot off in your scrawny ass. Could have fooled me, what with all the orphans in here and all, cuckoo, Orochimaru laughed his words off. But do feel free to continue, the feeble banter point of battles are ever so amusing sometimes. I'm sure your mind is twisting and turning desperately trying to come up with options to combat me or escape. Damn, that was cold. His insults and taunting were completely ineffective here. But then, he understood it. What were the words of some little weakling when you towered so high above them like a lion over an ant? Or at least that was probably how Orochimaru saw the current situation. Shows what you know, I could escape from you instantly and you couldn't do a thing about it. Daiki scoffed at him, if it wasn't for Sasuke being vulnerable, I'd be beating your ass like you owed me money right now. Literally. He could escape to Aisabu's personal dimension at any time. He was just reluctant to show it off in front of Orochimaru unless he was forced to. Well, you're welcome to try my interesting little friend. Orochimaru smiled widely, spreading his arms out invitingly, daring him to come at the man, though I should add, that if you feel brave because Kakashi-kun is here, he wouldn't make a difference I'm afraid. I'm sure he remembers how our last encounter went. I was barely a man at that time, Kakashi refuted. This won't go like that time. I'm far stronger than I was then. In response, Orochimaru chuckled derisively. No, you are not, he replied, denying his words. In fact, I dare say you're weaker. You've lost that edge you had back then, Kakashi-kun, and let all that potential you had go to waste. Jonin at a mere 13 years of age and with potential to rival our dearly departed Minato-kun, or at least near his own. But look at you now, you're older now than Minato-kun was when he died, and yet you don't even come close to his strength. What a disappointment you turned out to be. He's gonna need a fragment of Gelol for that one. Daiki resisted the urge to wince. That was a real burn right there. He had to resist the urge to clap. He was impressed. Surprisingly, Kakashi didn't react much at all to the insult, and kept his cool. Feel free to think so. True, I may be weaker physically, rusty from the peace we've enjoyed, but I've learned much along the way, the copy ninja replied. There may be a gap between us, Orochimaru, a substantial one, but don't think for a moment I don't have ways to cross it. Is that so? Orochimaru hummed thoughtfully. That is interesting. I wonder how exactly you would do that though. The Mangekyu perhaps. Did all that grief you went through in your younger years unlock it? Or mayhaps you've learned how to use the gates from Gai-kun. I remember you were quite close to him, were you not? Kakashi stilled, only for a very brief second. But neither Daiki nor Orochimaru missed it. Oh, so the 8 gates then. Orochimaru mused. Interesting, so the Sharingan even allows you to copy that method. Wait, it does. Daiki had to resist the urge to let his own eyes widen at that information. He had no idea how he would get Guy to teach him to open the gates. And here the solution dropped right into his lap. Once he had Shisui's Sharingan, he could just copy the method. Perceptive as always, aren't you, Orochimaru? I suppose you weren't called one of the greatest prodigies to ever come from Konoha without reason. Kakashi all but admitted he was right. But you guessing it doesn't change anything? I'm known as the master of 1,000 jutsu for a reason. Do you feel confident enough to take on all that jutsu amplified by the 8 gates? Now this is interesting. Daiki eyed Kakashi thoughtfully. This had went completely off script. Originally, Kakashi would have been stunned into inaction by Orochimaru, the gulf in their strength that massive. But here, Kakashi was ready to fight him and even had a plan to beat him. The 8 gates would fuck him up for sure, but it was still quite the hand to play. Even Orochimaru couldn't take that lightly, especially not with Daiki here. He already knew one little mistake would be all it took for Daiki to fire off the same jutsu he had in the Forest of Death, and if he couldn't escape it in time, like he had before, he would die. Well, that would be troublesome for sure. Orochimaru tapped his chin. Of course I would still beat you, Kakashi-kun, but it would become a bit of an exercise in doing so, and of course all that commotion would have reinforcements come running. Then he smirked. A good threat, Kakashi. How about I return the favor? He replied, and ever so casually, went through a few hand seals, before reaching down and pressing his hands against the ground, maintaining eye contact with Kakashi and Daiki and almost daring them to act. Daiki's eyes widened. He recognized those hand seals. The ground rippled and from it, a wooden coffin emerged from the ground. Oddly though, it wasn't as he was expecting. The coffin was open still, and there was no formidable shinobi within it. But rather, a girl he recognized, wrapped to the chin in bandages. Her black eyes was wild with panic and terror. Orochimaru-sama, please, I'm sorry we failed you, please have mercy. Kin-Suchi begged him. What is this? Kakashi growled at him, and it was the first howl of pure emotion he'd given since Orochimaru appeared. The state of Kin actually inflamed his temper. Orochimaru opened his mouth, but Daiki cut him off before he could. It's Edo Tensei, the Nadaime Hokage's jutsu, he explained. Using a living sacrifice, it lets you summon someone that's already dead back to the world of the living as a puppet to fight under your orders as long as you have the DNA. Orochimaru's eyes actually widened. You know of it, Daiki-kun. My interest in you grows ever more, he hissed out, almost moaning in happiness, before he turned his attention back to Kakashi. Indeed, this is the Edo Tensei Jutsu. You showed me your hand, I thought why not show you mine? And as kind as I am, I thought, why not let you have a reunion with your dear departed and beloved teacher, Minato-kun. Kakashi's eyes widened in absolutely horror. Minato can't be summoned. His soul is in the Shinigami's stomach. Daiki's mind raced. This could be a real problem. But nothing stopped Orochimaru from changing who he summoned. And if he summoned Hashirama Senju, then they were absolutely fucked. Even with him being weakened from the non-improved Edo Tensei that Kabuto would perfect later, he was still a cage-level shinobi, beyond anyone currently in this room. And with the Mokuton, he could suppress the power of a Beiyu, which would totally invalidate Daiki's trump card. Or perhaps I could let you meet you dearly departed little friends. I wonder what Obito-kun or Rin-chan's reactions would be to Kakashi-kun all grown new. He was cut off by two swords appearing in the air besides Daiki, crackling with lightning chakra. Twin streams of lightning shot towards Orochimaru, forcing the man to quickly evade, and Daiki didn't waste the surprise attack. He thrust his free hand out behind him, firing off a blast of pure force, jettisoning him forward at the same time he rushed towards Orochimaru. A split moment later, his foot smashed into the wooden coffin, right behind Kin's head and shattered it, and as he landed, he grabbed up Kin in his free hand and launched himself backwards, landing beside Kakashi. It was such a sudden attack, neither Kakashi or Orochimaru spoke for a moment. It only lasted a moment though. Orochimaru chuckled once more, how ruthless Daiki-kun, and we were having such a pleasant conversation too. He shook his head, and here I was being kind, not only offering Kakashi-kun the chance to meet with those he misses so dearly, but even offering up one of the three that tormented his precious genin in the forest not long ago. Kin on his shoulder whimpered, but didn't speak. I'm not interested in sappy shit like that. Daiki shrugged, even with balancing both Kin and Sasuke on his shoulder. Honestly, this has dragged on way too long. I'm a busy guy, you see, so I cut that crap off at the head. Or well, I will after I rip yours off if you don't piss off already. Ah, Daiki-kun, do you think little Kin is the only sacrifice I've prepared? I have dozens just waiting, Orochimaru tutted, and now you have even more baggage and made yourself a target. How do you plan to fight if you have to carry around Sasuke-kun and this useless little girl? In response, a jet of lightning shot from one of the Kiba blades hovering by his side. And Orochimaru tilted his head to the side, easily avoiding the attack. I think I'll manage, he replied dryly. Well, if you want her, Daiki-kun, feel free to keep her, she's very much disposable, not like you and Sasuke-kun. Orochimaru shrugged the attack off nonchalantly. Say, Daiki-kun, it may be a bit abrupt, but why don't you cut your ties with the Leaf Village and join me? Konoha has squandered your talent for sure. Not a single person to teach you. With my teachings, you could very well surpass the Hokage of the past. Kakashi growled again, and eyed Daiki from the corner of his eyes. I'm good, Daiki snorted. I don't need your help. Now, let's not be too short-sighted here. Talent only goes so far, my young friend. Orochimaru waggled his finger reproachfully. And this village will soon be a thing of the past. It won't be long before I raze it to the ground. No, you won't, Daiki denied flatly, instantly. The flat denying and so quickly actually caused Orochimaru to blink in surprise. Oh, and how can you be so sure? He replied, you haven't even seen a glimpse of my true strength yet, my young friend. And the village hidden in the sound, I created it. They're all my loyal subordinates. Do you think Konoha can stand up to myself with a village at my back? I just got done fixing up my house and my buddy's pond. You destroying the village means you'll destroy my house, where I live, keep my shit and relax. Not to mention, this village has tons of hot girls. Daiki deadpanned, before narrowing his eyes. If you try it, I'll kill you and raze your village to the ground instead. Well, that is a pity. Orochimaru shrugged, unconcerned. Well, I'm sure your answer will change in the future when you see what's in store for Konoha. I can wait, and am unbothered by the arrogance of a child who doesn't understand the situation. Casually, the pale man stuffed his hands into his pockets and turned, walking away, and I've seen all I needed to know. He looked over his shoulder at them both and grinned. Sasuke-kun desires power above all else. Since you cannot get rid of my cursed seal, the day will come when he seeks me out for that power. If my hands weren't full, I'd be sticking the middle finger up at you, Daiki replied with a snort. Please imagine I'm doing so. Very well, I'll do that. Orochimaru nodded and casually walked away, disappearing behind the pillars out of sight, his presence vanishing. For Kakashi and any normal person at least. Daiki stared through the pillars and watched him go, sinking into the ground with a single hand seal and making a straightforward path out of the building into the forest. Kakashi sighed, relaxing. Well, that was fun. The man commented idly, a bead of sweat trailing down the side of his face. Meh, that guy's a clown. Daiki scoffed. He's all big talk. I could take him. He'd have been in for a fight shock if he really tried to fight. Daiki would have dumped Kin and Sasuke's asses in Isabu's dimension, went full three-tailed cloak and unleashed all of his clones currently training in there while he was at it. Saying he's all big talk is quite funny from you. It's like your favorite pastime. Kakashi snorted. You might have your big turtle trump card, but if a single one of them going up against him was enough to bring him down, he wouldn't have reached this point. Double speak. Why was he right? He was currently privy to everything they were talking about. Sure, she seemed too terrified to even move in his grasp right now, but her ears were still working. Not true. My favorite pastime is getting laid. Unlike you, Virgin Kashi. Daiki snorted. Fight back. And how many of my kind has he actually fought? Never mind a perfect one like myself. Unless he ever fought Killer Bee or Yagura, then I doubt he's at all prepared to face me. You'd kill everyone in this tower by accident if you tried to go full power. Kakashi shook his head. Without it, he'd be privy to your secret, know what's going and flee before you could kill him, and he'd come up with multiple plans to deal with you. Orochimaru is not someone we can ever underestimate. Ugh, I hate it when you're right. Daiki clicked his tongue, before shaking his head. So what will we do about this girl then? Kintsuchi is her name from what I remember from when I was scoping out the first exam. Can I keep her? She's cute enough and I've been looking to get some maids for my place. He'd show Sasuke he could get hot maids. Yeah, no. Kakashi rolled his eyes and replied flatly. She's a foreign kunoichi and former subordinate of Orochimaru. What is wrong with you, kid? A foreign subordinate he was going to kill, whom I saved the life of, and I'm stronger than Orochimaru. I'm totally badass, Daiki replied, trailing off in a tangent before getting back on track. I doubt she's going to betray anything to the guy who'd snap her neck for a laugh. He felt the girl on his shoulder stiffen and swallow heavily. Still, not going to happen. Kakashi shook his head. We need to have her interrogated and learn all we can about Orochimaru and this Sound Village. Well, obviously, Daiki rolled his eyes, but beyond being a foreign kunoichi she hasn't exactly committed any crimes against us, and she won't be allowed to go freely, so she can be my maid after that. She tormented Sakura and tried to kill her and the rest of my team. Kakashi deadpanned. It's the Chunin exams. Do you know how many people I killed in the forest? Daiki scoffed. Hell, he planned on murdering the sensei of one of the teams he killed while he was at it. Brutally so. Besides, Sakura kicked her ass. She's lucky Sakura isn't built to use my jutsu or she'd be dead. In fact, you know I'm actually not in a position to grant any of that anyway, right? Kakashi rolled his eyes right back at him. If you want to have her as a maid instead of her being kept in a cell or killed, take it up with the Hokage. Fine. Daiki shrugged. Good. Kakashi shrugged. By the way, get bent, Kakashi. Daiki replied. Control your raging hormones, brat. Kakashi replied. Fuck you. Daiki retorted. No thank you. Kakashi retorted, and they bickered right up until they left the underground basement, where they parted ways, Daiki taking Sasuke to the infirmary and to keep an eye on him until he woke up. And Kakashi taking Kin to be interrogated. Daiki, being the ever generous, ever dutiful good buddy he was, carried Sasuke like a sack of potatoes over his shoulder to the infirmary. The two Chunin guarding the door of it gave him odd looks, but didn't stop him. In fact, they gave him respectful bows of their heads. Probably because the pair of them were present when he was mouthing off at Danzo with the full support of Old Man Third. Finally, some respect around this joint. Once he closed the door behind him, totally not banging Sasuke's head on the door frame as he entered, honest, he noticed that the place was empty. The mednin on staff was out for whatever reason. Well, whatever. Daiki shrugged, picking out the nearest bed and walking over to it. Sleep tight, princess. He unceremoniously dropped the Uchiha onto the bed, his body almost bouncing right off the bed, before pulling the curtains around the bed around and hiding him from view. Then he plopped down on the chair beside the bed and kicked his feet up on the infirmary bed, crossing his arms behind his head and relaxed. He sat there relaxing for all of a half hour, before the boredom really seriously fucking got to him. This is mind-numbing, he groaned, head lolling back over the chair and looking up at the ceiling. He couldn't even train in this place. There was hardly any space with all the medical equipment, beds and shit around. Even making sure Sasuke was comfortable and covered up in the bed after dropping him on it for a laugh didn't do anything. And he couldn't even leave this place, since he was guarding Sasuke. I really need to get my hands on a gaming console or something, he groaned aloud. Looking into it, he had found that indeed game consoles did exist in this world. Not ones that measured up quite to the ones in his memories, but he had found a few portable ones, the most up-to-date one being reminiscent of a Game Boy. The problem was, they were pretty new in release, made by a company at the Crescent Moon Islands. And they didn't sell them outside of there, so he would need to get a mission to head there to buy one. Which was a trip and a half for sure. And beyond that, there wasn't even anything really interesting going on at the Crescent Moon Islands for him to pick up. The Crescent Moon Islands events that Naruto, Sakura, Lee and Kakashi all got involved in, didn't involve any particularly powerful object or chakra source. It was just one dude using a team of ninja trying to take over the kingdom after killing the royal family. That might not be a bad idea on of itself to take care of though, he mused with a sigh. If he put a stop to it and got the gratitude of the royal family in place of Naruto, he could see about getting funding and shit from them for the village if him having to take over came to pass. Though if shit did go down like the other timeline and Old Man Third died in the invasion, he wouldn't exactly be able to leave the village himself to take care of it. Well, a clone could do it, I suppose, he shrugged, or a team of them hyped up by Isabu's chakra. They should be capable of taking care of that nonsense. And then he could get trade open with the Crescent Moon Islands. And get game consoles sent over here. A good plan, but not really anything that eases my boredom right now. Daiki sighed, sitting up straight in the chair. He cast a look at the Uchiha peacefully snoozing away in the bed beside him, and his expression turned deadpan. Having a good rest, I see. He drummed his fingers on his thighs. If he was awake, at least they could banter to pass the time. And neither of the two Chunin outside garnered much interest from him. Now, if one or both of them were females, that might have changed, but such was life. His eyes stayed focused on Sasuke, and with how bright the room was in the infirmary, he noticed just how pale the body was. Bro, you need a tan. We should hit up the beach or something for a vacation, he pointed out. Seriously, the dude was as pale as a ghost. If he got any paler, he'd look like chalk white and ever sigh-like. Honestly, his skin looked like a blank canvas. Wait, a grin spread across Daiki's face and he held his hand out, with a thought, summoning his seal brush from his Dimension Force seal. He stood up and leaned over the sleeping Uchiha. This is your own fault for falling asleep around your best buddy. I mean, it's tradition as well. He excused his future actions. He gently swiped the paintbrush over the other teenager's face. First, around the eyes, with a pair of black ink circles, connected by a line over the bridge of the nose. Then, he went downwards, to just above his mouth, and drew a nice big long and curly mustache and curled around so much his full cheeks were black ringed. Hey, classic. Daiki laughed to himself. Something was missing though. Oh right. Daiki's eyes lit up. His forehead was empty. He brought the brush up to his forehead and drew a nice, big long and thick inky cock, with a few little droplets of what looked like liquid shooting through the top and raining down over his eyes. Ha 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 ha. Daiki erupted into pure amused laughter. He couldn't wait to see his face when he looked in a mirror, or even better, if someone pointed it out to him. It would be way funnier if his fangirls that always squealed about how cool he was saw him like this. But if he saw it in the mirror, he'd definitely clean it off with a Uchiha-style pout before anyone could have a laugh at him. And there was a mirror right at the entrance of this room. Which meant his plan was doomed to fail. Guess there's no helping it then. Daiki shook his head, concentrating chakra into his palm. He pressed his palm against Sasuke's head and focused, before pulling back a good 30 seconds later. Now, there were a pair of lines connecting together and forming an arrow pointing down at the cock on his forehead. But it was mostly hidden by his hair and bangs. Just another condensed seal matrix, though this was a mere combination of the storage seal and the storage return seal. With but a thought, he could make the ink go into the storage seal, and then make it come back out. This way I can hide it until we pass all the mirror, then bring it out later. Daiki mentally pat himself on the back. He was such a genius. And this was gonna be a riot. Your immaturity knows no bounds. Isabu commented, deadpan. I'm bored. What do you expect? Daiki shrugged, sitting back down on his chair. And this is the boy in line to be the next Hokage. I fear for the future of this world. The huge Bayu shook his head in dismay. If I become Hokage, let me tell you, mini skirts, booty shorts, cleavage-bearing tops and compulsory Hokage lap dances are become mandatory. He replied. Single quote ellipsis dot. Exactly. Isabu groaned. You know, I know you're playing it up, but I can feel how tempted you are to actually go through with that. Hey man, Hokage sounded like such a shit job after the initial benefits. He'd have to get some good fun out of it somehow. And if he couldn't use the authority of it for someone like that for a laugh, then what was the point of it all? Too much responsibility for little in return after the initial benefits did not at all sound like a good time. Of course there was the bet he had with Tenten going on. He'd become Hokage just for that. Unfortunately, despite the brief amusement his doodling of Sasuke's face gave him, it wasn't long before he was back deep within the pitch-black ebony pits of boredom. Damn Orochimaru, if it weren't for him, Daiki would be free to grind away right now and pass the time in muscle-burning training. But no, already he'd wasted 3 hours just sitting guarding Sasuke. The funny thing was, that besides Kakashi or the Hokage himself, Daiki really was the best choice to guard Sasuke. If it came down to it, he was one of the very few capable of either beating Orochimaru or getting away from him. So he couldn't even fault the logic of Kakashi leaving him to guard Sasuke. Though he could sure as hell gripe about it to Isabu, to the huge tortoise's dismay. It was a good chance to grind up his whining ability, Daiki supposed. Thankfully, something that cut through the gloom of boredom broke him from his thoughts. A groan escaped Sasuke's lips, the Uchiha shifting noticeably in the infirmary bed, before slowly, his eyes blinked open, clearing his exhaustion. Thank fuck. He released a silent yawn, before pushing himself up in his bed and rubbing his eyes. Then his gaze shifted and fell on Daiki himself. Sasuke blinked, before rousing fully. Daiki. He mouthed, confused. Sup sleepin' beauty. He greeted the boy with a wave. Have a good sleep. Sasuke gave him an odd look. Why the hell am I waking up besides you of all people? 'Cause somebody needed to guard your sissy ass while you were out like a light. Daiki shrugged, grinning. He blinked once more, before narrowing his eyes. Since when am I a sissy? And why would I need your loser ass to guard me? He challenged. Since you passed out, again by the way, Daiki shot back, well, as far as being a sissy goes at least. The reason I'm guarding you is because Pedomaru tried to come yoink you while you were out like a light so he could sliver up your ass and go all oonga boonga in your body. Sasuke grimaced in disgust. That explains why I'm being guarded, not why you're doing it, he replied, and do you need to be so disgustingly crude? Yes, he shrugged, unashamed, grinning all the way, and you already know why I'm guarding you as well, 'cause I'm one of the few people strong enough to beat his ass if he tries anything. Bullshit, Sasuke deadpanned, denying his statement. You're strong for sure, but not that strong. Well, he wasn't wrong. I am if I use the full power of my Beiyu. Daiki shrugged again. Sasuke's gaze became drier. That's not you being strong enough, that's your Beiyu you clown, he huffed, and while we're on the subject, who the hell are you calling a weakling like you did earlier? The only reason you managed to do anything about the seal on your neck is because of your Beiyu, relying on another? Yet you were trying to say I'd be a weakling loser for relying on Orochimaru's power, which I won't, just saying, you're such a hypocrite Daiki. Do as I say, not as I do. Daiki replied. The Uchiha merely raised an eyebrow at him. The only hypocrite I like is myself. Utterly shameless, Sasuke scoffed, before smirking at him. After all that tough talk earlier, you're just as big a loser as you tried to make out I would be if I relied on Orochimaru. Daiki blinked slowly for a moment, organizing his thoughts, before countering, at least a snake man doesn't want to anally probe me like he does you. And you can never just let anyone get the last word in except for you. Sasuke rolled his eyes, before releasing a deep breath and sobering, his eyes locking with Daiki's own. Still, thanks for sticking around and trying to help, even if you can't do anything. It means a lot. That's fine, but I never really meant that. Daiki shrugged. I just knew Orochimaru was listening in and didn't want him to know I actually could fuck that seal up just like I did mine and make it fine for you to use. Oh, Sasuke uttered blankly, before sighing again, his gaze turning dry. I really hate you sometimes. Nah bro, you love me. Daiki smirked. Obviously I'm gonna do what I can to make sure old Pedosnekimaru doesn't get his slimy hands on you. I can't have him messing up our bromance. Another word I have no idea what the meaning of is, Sasuke replied blankly. Do you just love talking gibberish or something? Silly Sasuke. Daiki shook his head, but instead of explaining, he stood up to his feet and took a deep breath, before, you ma, homie. Yeah, no me. He broke out into song and sat down on the bed beside Sasuke, wrapping an arm around his shoulder and pulling him into a bro hug, before gesturing out widely with one arm, and if you ever need a wingman, I'd let any girl blow me tilde. I understood none of that except for the last part, Sasuke deadpanned, pulling out of Daiki's grip, and considering you showed an interest in Sakura and Yamanaka, I don't think your standards can get any lower, so that's not really much of a sacrifice on your part. Yeah, Daiki nodded, accepting his words. Well, you're a dickhead. Literally. It was hard to take him seriously with the ink glasses, mustache and big ink dick over his forehead spurting ink jizz over his eyes. Now he was going to laugh even more at Sasuke for his cheek. Who denied a bromance? He deserved the doodles now. Thankfully, with Sasuke awake to banter and take the piss out of, time seemed to flow in a lot quicker, and he was a lot less bored. Sure, the Uchiha liked to be quiet and tried to brood as he tended to do a lot, but Daiki's boredom could not be quenched with such a thing, and as such he spent hours annoying Sasuke. That too was a form of the grind. His ability to annoy his enemies was a vital skill. Sasuke made for a good test dummy, being the brooding stoic guy he was, so if something got to him, it would easily get to most others. And he kept that up right up until one of the Chunin outside the door let them know that the next part of the exam was beginning. Finally, Sasuke groaned in relief as they made their way through the hallways, heading towards the ground floor. His face was currently bereft of any doodles. For now, somebody's happy to get his fight on. Daiki noted with a grin at his side, arms crossed behind his head casually. No, I'm just glad I won't need to sit around and listen to your nonsense anymore. Sasuke snorted. That's so, Daiki mused, grin widening. For that, he would make sure to time his little prank very well for maximum points. They arrived not long later, to find that they were the last to enter. All eyes turned to them, inspecting them. Man, even Kakashi was here before them. Talk about a brass neck. There was even a few frowns shot their way. Well now, it seemed that they held them up a bit. There were a few smiles as well, of course, specifically from Hinata. Such a good girl. Naruto was lucky Daiki was a bro, and it wasn't bro-like for him to pursue Hinata. Sasuke ignored them, as was customary for the broody teen. Daiki, on the other hand, just grinned. They made their way over to the gathering of genin, taking position at the back of the crowd. Daiki specifically stood beside Tenten, since she and her team were at the very back. Yo! He greeted her. Tenten was one of the ones that had been frowning at him. She gave him a dry look, before turning her nose up at him and looking back towards the Hokage, who stood in front of a pair of giant rock sculpture arms formed into the seal of reconciliation. Behind him were multiple Jonin and Chunin, the staff of the tower, alongside the Jonin sensei for all the teams who passed. The only non-Leaf sensei being Baki, standing away at the back. Hey, must be awkward. She's still mad at me. He laughed inwardly. She wasn't happy at all. She had to put on that little simpering fangirl-esque fake personality and hype him up to get him to heal Lee. Though he felt more like she was putting more effort up into acting like that to him rather than was actually mad at him now. Congratulations to all of you. Anko's voice broke him from his thoughts, and he looked to the front to see her taking position beside the Hokage, on passing the second exam. She looked around the gathered genin, eyes passing over each and every single one of them. She only paused, and briefly at that, when she met his eyes. He winked. She had no reaction and her eyes continued on. So that's Guy Sensei's eternal rival, Kakashi. Tenten murmured at his side, and he looked to see the bun-haired older girl looking at Kakashi admiringly. He definitely has Guy Sense beat out on looks and cool factor at least. Kakashi has a tiny penis, like minuscule, even babies have bigger ones half the time. Daiki helpfully informed her. Kakashi visibly twitched and his head turned from where he was blandly staring forward to look into Daiki's eyes with his own singular revealed eye. It narrowed at him. Daiki stuck the finger up. Kakashi flashed the finger back at him for a split second before it was hidden away again. Tenten turned to him then and gave him an odd look. And you know that how? She asked. I've been on a few missions with him. Daiki shrugged. He got drunk on our way back one time, started bawling like a little girl about how he was still a virgin at his age, and the closest he ever got was third base, barely. The chick he was with laughed at him apparently for how small his penis is and left him. He blatantly lied. Uncaringly, without any guilt. He was a shinobi after all. And Kakashi was a prick. Kakashi's eyebrow twitched noticeably. Daiki's grin grew to shit-eating proportions. Tenten sighed. So he only looks cool then. She said, sounding disappointed. He's just as big a weirdo as Guy Sensei. It was good that Tenten was so used to Guy, that this was so easy for her to believe. Weirder even, Daiki nodded. He walks around reading smut constantly to get his rocks off because he's a super hyper virgin. He's given up ever getting laid. A tragic guy really. I mean, it is a bit weird, but more sad to be honest. Tenten grimaced. I still think Guy Sensei is weirder than that. You don't deal with him and his quirks like me on a daily basis. He noticed Sasuke was looking at him from his peripheral vision, looking completely weirded out, before glancing at Kakashi, giving the man a pitiful look. -100 respect. Hopefully he let Naruto and Sakura know about that little tidbit the next time he annoyed his team, and then Naruto, being a loudmouth and Sakura being a bit of a gossip with Ino, would get it spread around the entirety of the leaf. Get fucked, Kakashi. If you say so. Daiki shrugged at the bun-haired girl's words. So, I see you're talking to me again. I'm still mad at you, she replied flatly. It was just a joke, he pointed out. A humiliating joke, she responded, only Neji was privy to it, but that's enough. He's been giving me odd looks. Probably jealous that you acted that way for me and not him. Daiki assured her. Tenten snorted. Somehow I doubt that, she noted dryly, even taking him out of the equation, it was still humiliating. I have my pride as a kunoichi, you know. And I know for a fact if you got your pride hurt you'd start punching and ask questions later. Well, she wasn't wrong. She pouted at him then. You're such a bully. Cute. I kinda am, he agreed, before laughing lightly. Alright, how about I make it up to you? And well, let me say first, you're a tough one of the best here. I don't think any less of you or anything for that little act. Actually I was impressed with your acting skills. He complimented her. Well, that's good to know I guess. Her lips almost quirked upwards, before she smothered the smile that wanted to emerge. And how will you go about making it up to me? Well, he had a few options. I could take you out on a date, he teasingly replied. He was testing the waters. You're already going to be doing that though, she replied with a roll of her eyes. And he scored. She hadn't decided against them pursuing that relationship option later on. Good. True, I guess you'll have to settle for just a summoning contract then. Daiki shrugged casually. What would you prefer? A giant pack of wolves or a giant conch that has a super tough defensive shell and can use a bunch of cool things like a genjutsu mist and big ass water jutsu? Wait, what? Tenten goggled at him, eyes flying wide open. But before she could press for further information, Anko apparently decided it was time to move things along and that they'd had enough time to digest their passing the second exam. Now, the third exam will begin and Lord Hokage will be graciously taking the time to explain it all to you, she explained. Make sure you all listen up and take all of his words to heart, you might learn something. Old man Sandaime chuckled lightly at Anko's words, before smiling at them all. You have all done well to make it here, each and every single one of you a fine ninja and will no doubt go far, he praised them. Now though, the third exam is about to commence, but, before we go into the specifics of how things will progress, let me make one thing perfectly clear, which pertains to the underlying purpose of this exam. He paused briefly to let his words sink in, making sure they were all listening, before continuing on. Tell me, young ones, why do you suppose an examination of this nature is being jointly conducted by all of the 5 great nations? His smile turned into a faint grin. To promote friendship among all the nations and raise the overall general level in the ninja arts, he revealed. I will be very clear in what this means, what these series of so-called examinations are all about. Daiki noticed Tenten swallowing heavily at the man's words, and she wasn't the only one visibly reacting to the man's words. After all, the old man was completely relaxed, his stance and smile wholly welcoming. Yet a powerful pressure seemed to exude from him just naturally as he spoke, and it was pressing down upon everyone gathered. Daiki crossed his arms, eyebrow raising. He's just flowing his chakra, he noted. He could see it clearly. The man wasn't even letting any of it escape his body, yet still, just circulating his chakra within his body caused this kind of pressure. Such powerful chakra, it utterly dwarfed his own. The old man could probably crush most of the genin gathered here by just flaring his chakra at them. And to think this was him far from his prime and much weaker than he once was. Old man third was a complete monster. That is indeed very impressive chakra for a human. Isabu agreed. The fact is Bayu actually noted that in of itself, was impressive and telling enough. Isabu after all, still felt his own chakra capacity and strength, now in the realms of a cage, if a low-level one, was pitifully small. Quite simply, the Chunin exams are war in miniature, the Sandaime continued after a moment. The Chunin exams exist to promote the villages in place of war, a tentative stopgap and agreement between each of the 5 great nation ninja villages to stop our loyal ninja dying en masse during times of strife like they did for so many years. This is the friendship of we 5 villages. That's the stupidest friendship I've heard of. Shouted out in reply, Naruto. As expected. Though, he wasn't the only one that seemed to be uncomfortable with the Hokage's words and the true nature of the Chunin exams. Quite a few voiced a similar opinion as Naruto, though, few of them had the guts to say it so loudly and proudly, challenging the words of the Hokage as the blonde did. Make no mistake, these exams are not just about you young ones, but the glory and honor of the shinobi villages as well. Hiruzen wasn't daunted in any single way by the whiny grumbling. While this exam needles out any of you unfit to ascend up to the next rank, it will also more importantly showcase to many honored guests the ability of the villages. This includes the rulers and nobility spread around this continent. Each and every single one of them will be watching you, and your actions and abilities will reflect on your home. What that means, he began clarifying, is that if any nation's ninja show outstanding talent, ability and superiority, the gathered noblemen's eyes will be on them, and they will in turn be quick to commission the village who trained those superior fighters and talents for work, promoting the growth of their villages. Conversely, if inferior ninja take the stage and make a bad showing, it will reflect poorly on the village and may lead to less work commissioned. So why then is it necessary for us to stake our lives and fight here? Kiba called out, stopping the Hokage from continuing. Quite a few made muttering agreements with him. Daiki withheld the urge to groan in annoyance. How could fucking clan kids be this fucking stupid when it came to the duties of a shinobi or kunoichi? You know what? This was taking too fucking long. For fuck's sake, isn't it obvious? Daiki's words escaped his mouth before he could stop them. Many eyes turned to him, all eyes in the room actually. It's a dick measuring contest, you moron. It's basically a big show to say, look how fucking badass our genin are. If our little wimp kids are this strong, how strong do you think our jonin are? Come hire us, we'll beat everyone's asses for you cause we're the best of the best and all those other punk ass bitches can't measure up to us. There was utter silence at his words, and quite a few gaped at him, mostly the other genin. The likes of Sakura, Ino, Naruto, Kiba, Choji and such were outright goggling at him, but the ones in the know were pretty impassive. Which was fine, he just wanted this shit to get a move on. Of the jonin, only a few gave any visible reaction. Kurenai's eyebrows rose, while Asuma snorted in pure amusement, and Anko smirked widely, giving him a nod of approval. The Sandaime gave an audible cough, breaking the silence. Yes, while the wording was a bit crude, that is indeed what the Chunin exams amount to. The old man agreed with him, all eyes turning back to him as he began speaking again. The strength of a nation is derived from the strength of its ninja village, which in turn draws its strength from the many shinobi and kunoichi whom call that village home and fight for its prosperity. You ask why you must fight. It is because the greatest strength of these shinobi and kunoichi only emerges in the midst of a life and death battle. As he finished, one of the flak jack-wearing shinobi standing impassively near him made his way to the front and took a knee in front of the Hokage. Hokage-sama, if you don't mind, would you allow myself to take over the proceedings of the exam from here as its proctor? Gecko Hayate asked. Very well, Sarutobi nodded. You may proceed, Hayate-kun. Thank you. The man kept his head bowed for a moment before standing up and turning to face everyone, displaying a pale-skinned face with thick bags under his eyes. Good to meet you all. I am Hayate and I will be the proctor of the third exam, though before that, I will need to ask something of all of you. He made sure everyone was paying attention to him before he continued on. You see, before the third exam begins, there will be a set of preliminary battles, and whether you proceed to the true third exam or not, is dependent on you winning. He explained. Preliminaries. Surprisingly the one to shout out, voice aghast was Shikamaru. The hell, are you kidding? Hayate-san, I'm in agreement with him. He heard Sakura's voice speak up. Why can't we all proceed to the third exam? Why do we need to take part in preliminary battles? Well, I don't want to say the previous two exams weren't a trying experience, but the fact of the matter is, we still have too many applicants, he replied. As Hokage-sama explained to you all moments ago, We will have many rich and powerful guests watching you all. Very busy powerful people at that. So we must not only keep the exam intense, but also fast-paced and make sure that only the best of the best show off their skills. But, Sakura sputtered. Hayate cut her off before she could finish. If you are worried about your promotion, don't worry, this is a chance for you to show off your abilities as well. Everyone gathered here to watch will be judging your abilities as ninja to see if you are worthy of promotion or not. Even if don't win or make it through to the true third exam, you still have a chance at promotion, he explained, before clapping his hands loudly. Either way, if any of you want to drop out, now is your chance, because the preliminaries begin now. For a moment, a hush of silence befell the crowd of gathered genin, and a majority of them looked around, waiting for someone to speak up. Just as it looked like the moment would pass within nobody speaking up, a single hand was raised into the air. If it's all right, I'd like to call it quits here, one of the oldest in the crowd declared. An older teenager, more of a man really with gray hair, said, I've not shook off the injuries I received in the forest yet, and don't think I can amount to much here and now. Surprise, surprise, it was Kabuto. Which conveniently brings us down to 18 genin in total, Daiki mused. While he'd been having a laugh besmirching Kakashi's reputation, he hadn't been idle and had taken the time to count the opposition. There were currently 19 genin in total within the crowd, he specifically being the odd man out. He'd wondered how things would progress on that front, if someone would get a free pass or have to fight twice, or even if there would be a fight of 3, a little mini battle royal. That's kind of disappointing. Daiki sighed inwardly as Hayate accepted Kabuto's withdrawal from the next round. He had actually been somewhat hoping he'd get to fight against 2 people at once. Unless he fought Lee using the gates or Gaara, there wasn't really anyone here that could give him a challenge or a fun fight. Fighting 2 at once though, like Neji and Sasuke together, might have been fun. Naruto, of course, kicked up a big fuss. Kabuto, what the hell? The blonde cried out, what's up with you quitting? After making it all the way here too. Naruto-kun, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but those guys we fought before beat the crap out of me, the older genin replied, and ever since that scuffle with the sound ninja back at the first exam, I've been deaf in one of my ears, my balance is totally shot. There's no way I could take on any of you guys here in the state I'm in, especially in fights where killing is allowed. Oh, I see. Naruto visibly bit his lip, his shoulders slumping. Don't mind it, Naruto-kun, I'll try again next time. Kabuto laughed and pat him on the shoulder fondly. You just do your best, I'll be rooting for you. Naruto perked up at his words and grinned. Alright, just watch me then, I'll blow right through this part and be one step closer to being Hokage, he declared happily. As Kabuto laughed lightly and happily along with Naruto, Daiki found he had to grit his teeth to stop from making any sound. This is frustrating to watch, he thought. Because he knew Kabuto was just toying with Naruto and manipulating him, whereas Naruto was being utterly genuine and thought of the older genin as a friend who'd risked his life together with him. He felt like he was watching Kabuto make a total fool of Naruto in front of everyone. And while he and Naruto weren't exactly close or anything, it was still beginning to piss him off. Daiki watched as the gray-haired genin turned to his teammates and had a hushed conversation. Even now though, Kabuto was fully on guard. He wasn't showing his mouth to anyone. He'd positioned himself so that his face was partially blocked by his teammates and his arms. A guard against lip reading, his hand blocking the sound from echoing outwards and being heard, muffling his voice. You guys can take it from here, especially you Yoroi, with your abilities this part should be a piece of cake, Kabuto informed. It's the perfect opportunity for a show of real, brute strength. Considering how you resent my recent promotion over you, I'm sure you're itching for the chance to make a show. Too bad for Kabuto, the Shinkugan was not so easily fooled. HMPH, you may think you're our lord's favorite, but don't push it you brat. Yoroi scoffed back at him. Kabuto merely shrugged, smiling lightly at him, before turning to give Naruto a light wave goodbye, and proceed to make his way through the crowd of genin and leave the huge room behind. Probably a smart choice on his part. If he can't handle this, then he isn't ready to be a chunin. Tenten mused. Daiki shrugged and didn't comment himself. He already knew after all. That cunt was as strong as a jonin before he was a teenager. And was perhaps the person currently the closest in the world right now to actually being in a place to achieve Tenten's dream of being just like Tsunade. The guy after all was the best medic nin in the world right now after the busty blonde Senju. Alright, seems like nobody else is going to pull out. Good, makes things simple. Hayat mused aloud. There's 18 of you left. That means there's going to be 9 bouts of one-on-one battles, and the victors of those matches will proceed on to the real third exam, and as explained before, this will be no holds barred combat. Each pair will fight until one side is either unconscious, admits defeat or dies. A few shivered noticeably at the emphasis he put on the word dies, the weight of what was going down really dawning on them. Daiki was just getting tired of all the repetition. How many times did they have to hammer it in that they could die here? He'd been prepared to kill for the village and possibly die, had died even since he left the academy. The whole point of being a shinobi or kunoiki was fighting and killing for the village. Anybody who didn't get that didn't deserve to be here. People could whine and make all the heartfelt speeches they wanted, but as things were right now, this world ran on that logic. Killing and death were as common as breathing. Hayat reached into his supply pouch then and withdrew a small device, looking like a remote. He pressed something on it, and then there was an audible grinding noise as the wall behind the 2 huge stone fists slid up to reveal a large dark screen. This electronic scoreboard I've brought out will display the matches, Hayat explained. At the start of every round, we will display the names of both combatants competing against each other. Once the 2 are displayed, everyone else should make their way up to the railings above. He pressed another button on the remote and the screen lit up. A moment later, letters appeared on the screen, though shifting and changing at rapid speeds. Until a second later, they stopped and displayed 2 names. Okado Yoroi versus Uzumaki Naruto. There was silence again for a moment, before, woohoo! Naruto cheered, pumping his fist into the air. I get to go first. He hollered in celebrating. Yeah. Hayat shrugged. Alright, beyond the 2 listed, can everyone else head up to the platforms above? He asked. Daiki shrugged and did just that. He simply turned and jumped up through the air and landed above. He got quite a few stairs before everyone began following his lead. Moments later, the Hokage and the staff were at the very end of the room's platforms, whereas the Konoha Genin and their Jonin sensei joined Daiki. And the Sand trio made their way up to the opposite side, their sensei Baki joining them. The only ones left standing below were Hayat, Naruto and an older Genin, easily in his 20s wearing full purple, his headband attached to a bandana, a piece of cloth covering his lower face and a pair of dark shades hiding his eyes. As it turned out, the ones to land nearest Daiki was Team 8, Kiba, Shinoi, Hinata and their sensei, Kurenai. Naruto's up first, ha! Kiba noted, leaning over the railing beside Daiki, a grin on his face. This should be quick. You're not wrong, Daiki agreed. This is a complete mismatch. Naruto will dominate this fight. Kiba blinked. What? He asked, taken aback. You seem sure of that? Kurenai input, raising an eyebrow at him. Yet from all I've seen of Naruto, he's one of the least impressive here. Kurenai, once again proving that specializing was a horrible move and being wrong as always. You'd think you'd have learned by now after what happened last time. He used the jutsu Fu taught him to direct his message straight into her head. Kurenai twitched. Hayat called for the beginning of the match. Do you really think Naruto-kun will win? Hinata spoke up at his side before he could have fun poking at Kurenai. Just watch. Daiki shrugged. Something tells me this match will be over quickly. As soon as the words left his mouth, the match began in earnest. Naruto burst forward in a rapid sprint, rushing towards Yoroi. The shades-wearing traitor was quick to respond with a volley of shuriken, which Naruto hastily deflected with a drawn kunai. It kept him back long enough though for Yoroi to make a few hand seals, a visible aura of chakra forming around his hands. Daiki observed with interest. With his ability to see chakra clearly and his heightened analytical abilities with the Shinkugan, he was able to just what the man was doing for his technique. The chakra over his hands, connected to his tenketsu within his hands, seemed to be working almost like a vacuum. So he basically just slurps up chakra like a vacuum cleaner, he mused. He already had his chakra absorption seal, but learning that technique might not be a bad idea either. At the very least, it wouldn't hurt. From what he saw though, the rate of absorption, or rather the strength of the vacuum effect, seemed to be dependent on the chakra capacity of the user. Yoroi didn't seem all that impressive chakra-wise. I wonder, could I apply it to my whole body rather than just my hands? Daiki mused as Naruto, seeing the technique, quickly formed a very familiar hand seal. A split moment later, a huge puff of smoke erupted around him. Before he burst out of it, 4 more Narutos rushing beside him. A few measly clones. Wrong choice of move, kid. Yoroi barked a laugh and rushed forward to meet Naruto and his clones. 2 clones reached him first and Yoroi narrowly slid between a pair of punches aimed for each side of his face, his palms touching the shoulders of the clones. Only for nothing to happen. Yoroi paused in shock. What's with this stupid amount of chakra? He gaped. He obviously expected the clones to dispel from having the chakra drained. And to his credit, if it were really any normal person, the amount of chakra drained even from those light touches would have fucked the clones over. Too bad he was up against the worst match up for a chakra absorber. The 2 clones didn't miss their chance and grasped his arms, locking him tight in place. And thus he was unable to dodge as the other 2 clones reached him. One went low, sliding forward and kicking his ankles from beneath him, while the other uppercutted the man in the chin. At the same time the clones holding him let go. He went straight up, a grunt of pain erupting from his mouth. The real Naruto came in quick for the finish, jumping off the back of the clone that landed the uppercut. He shot up into the air just slightly above Yoroi and clasped both hands together. Then he brought him down in a powerful hammer blow. Yoroi shot down like a bullet, slamming into the ground hard enough to crater it and just lay there, not a sound coming from him. He was completely unconscious from the quick 3-part combo. Okado Yoroi is unable to continue. Uzumaki Naruto is the winner. Hayate declared after a moment. Silence. Oh yeah. Naruto pumped his fist into the air and cheered as his clones erupted into smoke and dispelled. He wasn't at all bothered by the silence and the various people now gaping. What the hell? Kiba goggled. Told you. Daiki shrugged, shooting a smirk back at Kurenai. Her eyebrow twitched in annoyance. Woo. Way to go Naruto. Sakura cheered loudly. Yeah woo. Naruto pumped both hands into the air, displaying peace signs with both, a smug smile on his face. First match and first win, I'm the man. He probably would have stayed there celebrating if not for Hayate ushering him up above and Medic Nin carrying a stretcher appearing in a shunshin to carry away Yoroi. Naruto-kun has come a long way. Hinata noted, a pleased smile on her face as she watched him ascend up the stairs. The blonde cockily swaggered his way over to Team 7, walking right past Team 8 and Daiki. He only paused briefly to grin at Daiki challengingly before continuing on. What? Daiki blinked. Shouldn't Hinata have tried to give him some medicinal cream right about now? Sure he didn't take any hits in that fight, but he was still looking pretty trussed up from his time in the forest, even if any external wounds had long since been healed. He looked at the Hyuga girl who returned his gaze, smiling gently at him. His brows furrowed and she gave him an odd look. I wonder who's next. He played it off, musing with a shrug. He didn't have to wait long to see, because Hayate was already in the process of choosing the next matchup. He wasn't at all expecting the names that appeared. Yurei Daiki vs Yamanaka Ino. Oh come on, are you kidding me? Ino's voice shouted in disbelief from along the platform.
Everybody subscribe, like, share, and comment. Follow me on Instagram. Bye, friends.